Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to break briefly for lunch. We are in section 6 of the agenda, information and reports. And the next item up, we have Dr. Lowe presenting, and it's item 6.2, Vision 2030, Student Veteran Credit for Prior Learning Demonstration Project. And I see the chancellor grabbing her mic, so
Yes.
I'll turn it to you.
So two very, very exciting projects focused on our student veterans. So I'd like to turn it over to Board Member Blas Villalobos to make some opening remarks.
Thank you. I think the most beautiful thing about these two projects or items is that I can actually use myself as an example for each one of them. But just allow me to read through my notes to try and stay on task. As a community college student veteran who relied on the GI Bill to cover the cost of tuition and my daily expenses, I vividly remember how stressful it was not knowing whether my benefits would be enough to complete my degree. Unfortunately, due to refresher courses I had to take, and while trying to figure out which degree I would pursue, I ran out of GI Bill benefits during my last semester at Long Beach City College, and I had no idea if I was going to be able to continue my education at Cal State Long Beach. Add to that the birth of my daughter, who decided to be born during finals, and I actually had to leave my research methods final because she decided that was the best time to be welcomed into this world. I was fortunate enough to receive additional education benefits from the VA, which allowed me to complete my degree at Cal State Long Beach. However, that was not the case for many veterans at the time. And for several of those veterans, that meant the end of their academic career. Which brings me to this agenda item. As you know, in collaboration with the Mapping Articulation Pathways Initiative, the Chancellor's Office will conduct a demonstration project to improve equal access, completion transfer, and career attainment for veterans and adult learners. So why is this important? Approximately 26,000 veterans and active duty service members were enrolled in the California Community College in 2021. To put things in perspective, if student veterans are awarded 30 units through credit for prior learning, they will save $902 million in GI Bill benefits. Those 30 units can save a student veteran at least 2 semesters worth of benefits that can be used to reach additional academic goals. It goes without saying that I fully support this effort, and I want to take this time to thank all those involved in these efforts. Special shout out to Terrence Nelson, who has been working on this Credit for Prior Learning initiative for a while. In fact, I believe he gave his first CPL presentation back in 2004, if I'm not mistaken, as well as Calvin Gloria, who's a Navy veteran, and Janelle Brecky, and of course the Chancellor's Office, Chancellor Christian, and all those involved in making this a reality. This is an extremely proud moment for me as a veteran and also as someone who's dedicated his life to working with vets. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction, Chancellor Christian and Board Member Villalobos. You've already spoken well to why this is such an important project and very much integral to our Vision 2030 work. I will be very brief and then invite our guests to join who will really dig into the content with you. But as we continue our work for Credit for Prior Learning, it's exactly with this vision that your board colleague just shared. How do we ensure that we are opening up and frankly expediting and streamlining the process for our veteran students, for our working adult learners, really giving them credit where credit is due for the expertise, the skills, the competencies that they have developed outside of the classroom domain. So as a quick reminder, Board of Governors, this is a continuation of your work supporting Credit for Prior Learning. We codified policy in 2020, and we now do have every district on record with local policy that is in alignment with Education Code and Title V regulations. We did some initial work with 2 pilots to help colleges to implement Credit for Prior Learning. We did a full-scale pilot with Palomar College, and they have now become one of the role models for Credit for Prior Learning and how you do this well. And we have a full toolkit that remains available online in the Vision Resource Center to support colleges with that. as well as another pilot that we did in cooperation with the Academic Senate to actually have faculty walk through the process of how do you look at an industry certification and align that to the competencies and the student learning outcomes of a course. You're now going to see how that work has exploded just since 2020, in particular with the work that has been done by the MAP initiative, which we are excited to partner with them for this demonstration project. So I'm going to invite to join us three wonderful individuals, Dr. Samuel Lee, who is the Chief Ambassador for the California MAP Initiative from Norco College, Allison Tom Mira, Dean of Academic Affairs at West Los Angeles College, as well as our own Assistant Vice Chancellor, Gina Brown, and they will walk us through the rest of the content. Please join us, colleagues.
Good afternoon, board members. I'm going to go ahead and, if we can bring up the slideshow, please. And we're going to go ahead and get started with Dr. Lee.
Thank you so much. Thank you, President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, and Chancellor Christian. Thank you for inviting us to share with you today, especially on the heels of Veterans Day. This is just wonderful timing to be able to share with you a lot of the great work that's been happening in the colleges and the momentum that's gathering out there to support veterans and working adults in the state. Board Member Villalobos' story is all too common, and it's been 30 years that we have been behind the ball on giving our veterans particularly the credit that they deserve for their military training. Let me start with just a preview of what CPL is. I know you're very familiar with credit for prior learning, but basically it's just the learning that occurs every day outside of the collegiate environment. And it can take place in a number of areas. Oh, next slide, please. Thank you so much. Credit for prior learning can occur in many different modes and environments, including adult education, including military training, industry workplace training, apprenticeship, non-credit, high school articulations, non-credit learning, non-accredited learning, work and life experience, and for incarcerated individuals. And so we see that each of these areas are opportunities to connect prior learning with college credit. We think that CPL in our work with the colleges has the most potential of any of our unexplored opportunities with students to make the highest positive impact on all populations, programs, and partnerships. Next slide, please. So Board Member Villalobos received, when he was separated from his military service, what's called a Joint Services Transcript, a JST. All service members receive a JST. And the American Council on Education for the last 30 years has been evaluating the training done in the military. And they gather disciplined experts from around the country, from accredited colleges and universities, faculty discipline experts, and they norm them and train them and give them access to instructional materials that we would not, as civilians, have access to. They evaluate those instructional materials, and they look at the different occupations in the military, in the branches of military, and they make credit recommendations. Credit recommendation might be something like 3 hours in AC/DC electronics, or 3 hours in CPR, 3 units of leadership. And those credit recommendations are listed on the JST. So every service member has a JST. Every service member has a list of credit recommendations on those JSTs. The problem is there's no connection between those credit recommendations that are made by ACE and the college curricula, the courses at the college. The only way to make those connections is to evaluate the course against the credit recommendation and have disciplined faculty make that connection and approve it or deny it, and then store that information in a system. And that's what MAP is, basically. It's a system to facilitate that process of evaluating the credit recommendation made by ACE and then comparing it to a college course and then storing that decision and making it available to students as credit for prior learning. So in the military, the number one reason our service members join the military, you might be surprised, is for the benefits. is particularly the education benefits. And it's somewhat of a surprise when they transition out of the military that often they get very little credit for the training that they've received. They get very little college credit. And so we'd like to reverse that and make a difference there. And also, our service members get 36 months of GI Bill benefits to pay for a 48-month bachelor's degree. And so about 25%, when surveyed, actually drop out of their educational program because they run out of GI Bill benefits. And that's tough. And so we want to leverage CPL to maybe buy that first year for that service member using CPL, allow them to use the College Promise, Pell Grant, defer using their GI Bill while they're at the community college, finish in a year, and then have 3 years of benefits to go on and complete a bachelor's and a master's degree. To us, that's the magic formula for service members. Also, we have an obligation to do this per Title V and the VA regulations. Next slide, please. So we found that through studies that adult learners finish at 2 to 2.5 times the rate of when they receive CPL. So if they receive 15 units of CPL, they will be finishing at 2 or 2.5 times the rate of others who don't receive it. Thank you very much. MAP was developed in California as a California solution, and you already heard my explanation of what it does. And the system not only stores the credit recommendations, but it makes them available to students to search and for colleges to share so they can share each other's decisions. Next slide, please. So currently today, we have about 2,000 plus joint services transcripts in MAP. It's really a start. We should have 20,000. We have, though, 81 new industry certifications approved by our faculty, which is huge. That's a brand new development. And West LA College, which you'll hear from in just a second, is actively awarding students in many programs, as well as Miramar. And we have a new public listing of all of our approved articulations, which students can access and colleges can access and share. Next slide, please. Now I want to turn it over to Allison Tom-Mura, who's the Dean of Academic Affairs at West LA College. And they were recently named College of the Year by the MAP cohort of 76 colleges for their progress in awarding CPL to students. Allison?
Thank you very much, Sam. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor. Thank you very much for having us. Just to tell you a little bit about how West LA came to, thank you very much for your leadership on making the changes to Title V and the mandates. But as a dean who is then given the responsibility to implement mandates, I did actually volunteer to take on credit for prior learning as just an additional area to do. And because I saw it as an important equity and access for my students, I actually have spent many years in adult ed. And so it was and working with numerous workforce partners and with the CTE side. So it really was, I think, a really easy transition to lead credit for prior learning on my campus. It's been a true partnership that we've had to make new inroads with our student services side and the academic side of changing the way we do business to serve this untapped market and to really serve marginalized and really an untapped market of students that have been coming. All of us are struggling for enrollment. And so I saw it as a way to kind of sell to my college and my team members, like, look, this is an easy way for us to get more students here. Not just the ones that we're churning, through the revolving door, but those that can actually finish, and tying it to the SCIF model as well. And so we were part of one of the colleges that were part of the 55 colleges that joined the pilot program back in 2022. But what was a changing moment was when we applied for and received an IEPI partnership resource team that was led by Dr. Lee and visited our college to talk with our faculty, to talk with our team and I put together another team of volunteers that said, hey, who wants to do more work and exciting work for our students for no additional pay or any duties relieved? But I was able to recruit our articulation officer, also got a few classified staff that were saying, hey, this is related to my work. I'm serving as secretary for the dental hygiene program. Yes, we want to support the students and help figure this out. So, that really led us to really looking at the operational. How do we actually do this with limited staff, limited resources, and of course, already a lot of work? And I think working with this talented team who really listened to us and said, look, we really just need one system. My staff are not going to input it in two different systems, one at our college or a district and one for you guys. So it has to work for us here. And that's where the faculty really dug in. And as you can see from even though our numbers are just under 300, this is a great start. But I want to kind of tell the diversity of this. Our real estate appraiser training cohort, the 150 students is a result of a partnership with our LA County Assessor's Office. We are training the new workforce of appraisers. We're diversifying that workforce, and we're giving them 3 courses of CPL that are also prerequisites for the next 2 courses in their appraiser certificate, which would then get the award and feeds into our success matrix, as well as training this workforce. Our registered dental hygiene license of CPL is tied to our bachelor's degree program. You probably know we have one of the best bachelor's degree programs in the state, and we give 5 courses for a student that is coming to complete the bachelor's degree, usually they already have a dental hygiene license. So that's a big incentive for people to come to West to complete their bachelor's degree. Our dental assisting license CPL program is tied to our new apprenticeship programs that we have with dental offices in our area training the next workforce. Our EMT and paramedicine program is with a local educational provider. You might have heard of them, UCLA. Their extension program, who is one of the largest training of paramedicine and EMT, we are actually giving credit to their students for their non-credit, their extension training, so they can get credit by exam and credit for prior learning through industry, and launching them into the workforce and incentivizing them to continue their education with certificates. And then the last one I'll highlight is our partnership with our local adult schools. We're not in competition, we're here to complement. And we are transitioning oftentimes our low-income, disenfranchised students from our local adult schools who went to the dental assisting program at Venice Skills Center. We are transitioning them to give them the radiology training that they don't have the facilities or the expertise there, giving them credit for 2 courses for their training, and so they are incentivized now to actually earn a certificate or a degree through the college and continue to matriculate even into a bachelor's degree. So this is while we're currently at just under 300 students, it really reflects the diversity of the kinds of partnerships and the opportunities to change lives in our community. Next slide, please. I just want to also highlight the great work of San Diego Miramar. They are really, their faculty have been working like crazy. They've just approved over 80 CPL that are tied to career technical certificates. This is the wonderful thing about MAP, is that faculty from across the state can see what their peers are approving at other colleges to get ideas and to evaluate, hey, that's something that we can adopt too, because it's the same industry standards. For example, last work, I can see and double check that 3 or 5 different colleges have done that. Oh, this is a slam dunk. I'll approve that because it's becoming the industry standard. And if I want to stay in business, I need to also offer this to our students. So this is kudos to San Diego Miramar for doing that. And now they're also uploading their students that they've approved and are awarding. So they'll soon be catching up to us, but we are going to be approving even more at West. And then the next slide, I just want to talk about one of their students. This is Nadine, who had started at Miramar, but had a little pause in her studies when she found out that all of her prior training that she had in aviation wasn't going to count. And so that was a little discouraging, because then she's like, well, I have to take all this stuff over again that I already know. But then recently, the faculty approved CPL for her discipline, and she was informed and came back. And so she was able to finish faster and complete without that time and extra cost of repeating things that she already completed. And she's now earned her Associate of Science degree. So that's another great story of someone that's been able to finish faster. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Allison. I should mention that the Magic 117th College, we were counting the adult ed college in San Diego district. So that's where that came from. Next slide, please. So this is a family. In the center is Santiago Vega Jr. He's a Marine Corps veteran, 4 years in the Marine Corps. And when he exited out, he came to Norco College, and we evaluated his transcript and found 17 units of CPL to give him. Well, it turns out we were at a fundraiser, and his dad was there to cheer him on, and found out he had the same MOS, military occupation specialization, as his son. They were both transportation operators in the Marine Corps, both did 4 years. Dad said, well, I've still got a JST. How about I get my credit? He's a business owner. He owns a lighting company. He's an entrepreneur in the area. He and his wife partner on the lighting company. He says, I want my 17 units. I said, well, welcome aboard. And we got him 17 units. He put his lighting business on hold and is now full-time enrolled at Norco College, completing his associate's degree, and plans on going for a bachelor's. When Josie found out about it, wife Josie, who does the books, she decided to put her career on hold too. Apparently, the lighting company was in a place where they could do that, and now she's at Norco College studying for an associate's degree. Their whole family is transformed into a new direction because of CPL. CPL sort of interrupted them and came along and said, yes, why don't you come to college? And it's just a wonderful story of transformation that we see. And this is something we'd like to see replicated all over the state. Next slide, please. Do we have Joey on Zoom? He was having some trouble connecting.
Yes, we do.
All right, wonderful. I'd like to introduce to you Joey Mora. Joey Mora is a 22-year Army veteran, a reservist, actually. He's still on active duty now. And he might tell you a little, though he is humble, he's on his 5th deployment. He's had 4 overseas deployments. He's a first sergeant MP in the Army. And he is our first recipient of 30 units of credit. And he's here to join us today and tell you a little bit about his story. Joey?
Joey, you want to unmute yourself?
How's that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. How's everybody doing today?
I'll giving you the
Can you hear
thumbs
me?
up.
Okay. So yeah, I'm 22 years in the Army. First of all, thank you, Dr. Lee, Norco College and the MAP program. I was not thinking of ever coming back to school. I was never a school kind of person. One of the staff members, Mark Diaskis, contacted me and said, hey, you know what? Through this program, you can get all the military training that you've done in the last, I think it was like 18 years, which I've gone through a lot of schools in the military, and you can combine that into a degree. So I said, you know what? It wouldn't hurt. Yeah, go ahead, run my JSTs. Let's see what we can do. Well, I had a lot of military training, and because of that, I only had to take a couple classes at Norco, got my AA. And then after that, I said, well, I already have my AA, so let's go for my bachelor's. And I'll finish my bachelor's in a couple months. I think March should be done with my bachelor's. And from there, my master's, thinking of doing my master's. But that would not be possible if this program did not, come into my life. I was never thinking of going back to school. I was military. And even in my civilian career, this program and this degree has helped me immensely in both the military and civilian career to promote. And I'm just a better life, it's so much easier. But it's a great program. I still tell everybody about the MAP program. Even if they're not in the military, I still tell them, well, you might know somebody in the military. So, pass this information, because it's units that they've earned through military training. And military training is not the easiest. At times can be very stressful. So you think of college courses, but now put added stress, and that's your military training. So I think it's a great program. I back it 110%, and like I said, I still tell everybody about it that I can.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you so much for your service, and thank you for joining us today and sharing your story. We appreciate it. I'd like to just say one last thing in closing. We are very aware in our work with veterans that the transition stress, the impact of transition stress on our service members, especially when they're exiting one mission and entering another. And we believe that CPL has a role to play in creating a warm handoff from service to scholarship by recognizing and respecting their service and training and saying, you belong here. So 30 credits worth of your experience and training is equivalent to what we would provide you here, if not better, equivalent or better. So you really belong here in this environment. And so we believe that's very important to reduce transition stress, particularly in the first year and a half when service members are transitioning out. It's a very perilous time. And I believe working adults experience very similar transition stress when they're thinking about, well, a better career, living wage to support my family. I can only see a path forward if I go to college, and yet I don't see a pathway to college. And CPL is not in their lexicon. They don't know how to navigate that. So we're looking at both of those things, and we see CPL as an opportunity to reduce that stress and open doors of opportunity for our veterans and working adults statewide. Let me turn it back over to ABC Brown.
Thank you so much. And I want to say thank you to our guests and our students for joining us today. We have 76 colleges in the MAP cohort, but that still leaves 39 more. And so the question is, why? What do we need to get those other colleges on? So as you can see on the screen, when colleges join the MAP cohort, we are asking them to change policy, procedure, and personnel to facilitate and optimize awarding CPL. But inevitably, there are going to be challenges to expansion. In those challenges, we need stable funding to maintain the technology platform. We need funds to institute the new culture we're asking for. We are asking for faculty to be educated on this topic and understand the central role that they play in CPL awarding. Next slide, please. So, in collaboration with the MAP initiative, the Chancellor's Office will conduct a demonstration project to improve equal access, completion, transfer, and career attainment for veterans and adult learners through credit for prior learning. And we hope it will be the foundation for statewide expansion. So our plan is to have 6 colleges who receive up to $225,000 for a 3-year grant beginning next spring to join the MAP initiative cohort. Our non-cohort colleges, so those are the colleges that are not currently participating, we're asking them to become participating colleges, develop a campus-wide shared understanding of the validity and value of CPL. This is among faculty, staff, administration. We're asking them to review CPL current stakeholders, resources, procedures, supports, requirements, the technology that's currently available on campus. And we're also asking them to target specific disciplines and areas of opportunity in their local areas. For cohort colleges, if they join this demonstration project, we're going to ask them to do even more, to push even further, to develop a comprehensive credit for prior learning framework, to institutionalize awarding CPL that hopefully we can drag and in some ways drop to all of our other colleges. We want to develop the capacity to maximize CPL awarding so that it's part of the budget. It's part of the every year operating, so it is not a separate endeavor. It is included every year, and that's including it in those accountability structures. And then most importantly, we really want to develop industry and institutional procedures for aligning workplace training and standards with training and curriculum. All of the colleges in the demonstration project will be expected to award CPL, obviously, align their system policies to ensure transfer to UC, CSU, and our private colleges, adopt articulations from other colleges, and then embed CPL within their guided pathways framework. There are a few next steps. We need to continue to collaborate with the MAP cohort to refine demonstration project details. We need to determine a methodology and how we're going to select colleges to join the demonstration project. We also want to connect this demonstration project with others, such as the apprenticeship, demonstration project. And of course, we need to secure demonstration project funding. So that's the total of our presentation. We can take any questions if there are any.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Colleagues, questions or comments regarding the presentation? Board Member Grande.
Thank you, President Costa, and thank you so very much for the presentation, and especially to Joey for providing his experience with credit for prior learning. The first question that I have is regarding limits on credit for prior learning and the ability to leverage them outside of the community college to the transfer institution. Are there limits to the awards as well as to the transferability of the awards or the courses that they received credit for?
There are limits. We work closely with the CSU Chancellor's Office to align our policies and procedures so that there's a seamless transfer of all transcribed CPL. There's really not a limit per Title V or accreditation standards from ACCJC on the number of units that can be awarded. There is a limitation by WASC at the 4-year CSU level that they limit 25% of the degree for a baccalaureate for CPL that is evaluated at the CSU. So that limitation does not apply to transcribed CPL that's transferred in. So we think it's very important when we offer CPL to students that we do it in an informed way with the student. We have to give the student an opportunity to accept, deny, or appeal those decisions on CPL. Plus, it has to be informed by their program of study and their transfer institution. UC does not accept CPL the same way CSU does, and we're very aware of that. And we have discussions ongoing with the UC system office, with the president's office, on clarifying what type of CPL they are looking for. And in this case, the only type of CPL that can be transferred to the UC reliably is credit by exam. And so when we're working with a student who wants to have UC as a potential transfer destination, we inform them of that. So much of our work is actual professional development, working with, we have a multi-college counselor work group right now that's underway with our CPL work group, where we bring counselors from around the state to develop procedures and best practices for how to advise students in the CPL process, because it is a very delicate, and you must be informed of all the decisions that you're making when you transcribe CPL for students. And we're also working with our colleagues. How do you transcribe CPL? Many of them don't know how to transcribe CPL, and there's not standard practices, so we're working on developing standard practices with those. So when the CSU gets a transcript with CPL, they see, oh, I see how it's coded. That's familiar to us. It's all transparent and on the front. You're welcome.
I need to take a really deep breath because, you know, as I look at the Veterans Program and the Credit for Prior Learning, you guys have set the stage for what we're trying to do system-wide relative to other credit for prior learning. And I had another question, but and I will get to it. But I guess my question is general, and I don't even know who to. I'm going to put it out there. Somebody, if you can answer it, please. You know, this issue around transfer is an issue that we continue to deal with even today, even with legislation that says there needs to be, you know, smooth transitions. And when it's overlaid, okay. Let me ask the question this way. So currently, those students who want to go to either a CSU or a UC, what are the pitfalls currently relative to credit for prior learning? You laid it out, but I didn't understand it. Other than there's a problem, there potentially is a problem, and what I assumed, and it could be wrong, is you have to be very careful of what the student has to be very careful about their courses, the number of units they're getting, and what that limit is as they're going through, because if they get too many, they're not going to be accepted, and it can slow down that transfer pathway. Would that be kind of accurate, or please share?
We have not experienced that. We have not experienced a student being disappointed in their transfer of CPL, particularly to the CSU. In fact, on the contrary, we found the CSU has been really great to work with in clarifying their stance once and again that if the community colleges transcribed CPL, they will accept it as part of an ADT or CSU GE breadth without review.
And is this system-wide or is it just?
System-wide.
Okay, all right, good.
System-wide. And so that is not really an issue. Now, the perception is slow to change, though, among practitioners at the colleges that this is a problem. And yet, that's why we meet often and have public discussions about this with the CSU. We had a discussion on this very topic at our recent fourth annual CPL summit, where Associate Vice Chancellor Brent Foster, who oversees CPL at the CSU system, clarified for the field, once again, that if it's transcribed by the community colleges, they will accept that CPL. And we take a very different stance with UC, and we encourage our colleges to work directly with each UC campus, not only that, with each UC department, because their departments vary so widely. So they have to make a faculty-to-faculty connection in order to reliably advise a student in that regard. And yet, we have UC Santa Cruz wanting to work with us on MAP. And we have discussions with UC Merced. We just recently met with the UCAOs and the CSU AOs. And so we have these open discussions to clarify so that we don't shipwreck our students. It's very important to us that we don't do that. But I think the good news is that as we we say we're developing a community of colleges in this CPL so that we share what we learn and what we hear in the field. We've learned a lot working with West LA, actually putting this to action and transcribing it and actually awarding it to their students. And we change the system to accommodate what they're doing, and we listen to others and what they're doing, and we're constantly changing to accommodate, to ensure that we don't waste financial aid. There's financial aid impacts to CPL sometimes, benefits impacts, transfer impacts, but we're finding it's all a positive impact when it involves counselors and evaluators and the faculty partners. Very important.
With the campuses that haven't joined MAP, is it a resource issue? Is it a prioritization issue? Why don't we see 100%
Basically, it's a resource issue. We started with one college with a state appropriation to build a proof of concept, and then we expanded to the 3 colleges in our district. Then we were supported by strong workforce funding to support the 12 colleges in the Inland Empire Desert Regional Consortium, and then we got another $2 million state appropriation to build out to 55 colleges. And so we had one other $2 million appropriation to build out to 76 colleges. And so those resources allow us to expand our support. We get to meet with each of our colleges on several occasions to develop a game plan, procedures, make sure the data is correct, make sure they have a game plan on how to go about this. We encourage all colleges to upload all joint services transcripts for their service members. Just to learn how to do that is a process in itself. And what MAP does is it grabs those JSTs and it parses them, it pulls them apart and presents it in a place for faculty to create articulations. That just takes a lot of resources to get that underway.
How much do you think is needed to complete the program for all the campuses?
It costs us about $35,000 per institution to support a college. So if you do the math on that, it's about $6 million ongoing a year to support not only the CCCs, we want to support the CSUs. We want to list all the articulations of the CSUs so that, for instance, at CSU San Diego, they will give service members credit for Area A1, Public Address, which is one of the golden 4 courses that is required in CSU GE Breadth for transfer. CSU San Diego gives service members, if they have a credit recommendation of public speaking or of interpersonal communication or of public address, they will give them 3 units of credit for that, and they'll clear their Area A1. That's a big deal. Why are we requiring our service members to do public address at the local college when they get to San Diego State? They say, why did you take this class? You didn't need to take this class. And so we want to include the CSUs in that so that we have a seamless, and we can identify 2+2 pathways. We want to identify all the CPL on a 2+2 pathway. So if you're MOS like Joey Moore and 31 Bravo and you're an MP, you know that you can see, oh, if you're a 31 Bravo MP with this rank, you're going to get 30 units of credit on this 2+2 pathway to from this community college to CSU somewhere in your area. And that's really impactful if we can advertise those.
Can I just respond to that as well? As a manager at a college that's doing this on the ground, it's really that there really isn't any money for this and the incentive. Yes, it's another mandate. I mean, I'll just tell you the reality. It's like, oh my God, it's another mandate from the state. We already have so many. Who's going to do this work? And like Dr. Lee mentioned, it's a huge culture shift at our colleges, because many of, like our college, for example, we have to really, the academic side, we really took lead on this, even though it's been primarily housed in student services under admissions. But then the way that they do it is that, oh, well, we receive these transcripts, but we don't really award anything until someone petitions to graduate. I'm like, oh my God, that is too late. I go, so it's like totally backwards. And so it really takes a lot of effort and continuous effort to engage and prophesize and convince these people that we need to change the way we've been doing business. But then they're like, well, who's going to upload these forms, Allison, because this isn't in any of these staff's job descriptions. And, you know, we're one of those districts that still has a personnel commission. So that's also challenging. So, you know, the realities of making it work at a college, because out of our 9, we're the only college that, I mean, we're all members of the pilot. No, don't get me wrong, but we're the only one doing anything. And it's because I personally volunteered to do it without any support and kind of patchworking and putting together a team of other volunteers to really do it. And it just so happens that our articulation officer is also a dental assisting faculty who really believes in this. Most of our AOs in our district are counselors, and so they're not necessarily at the forefront of understanding what CPL is and how to grant it and how invaluable it is. And so Dr. Lee always goes, oh, you have a unicorn call. But I go, it really makes a difference to have this diverse team of an administrator who's going to take the hits for policy changes and the way we do business, and then an AO who really understands and who's a faculty member in CTE who can also champion and work with other faculty, and then classified who are willing to say, I don't really care that it's not in my job description. I will upload these petitions and I will review the evidence against the rubric of what you guys have, what the faculty have approved, and we will create a system. And we have these little infographic charts that are internal, infographic charts for the students, because it's all about streamlining it and reducing barriers for students to get the access and to get the credit that they have already earned instead of wasting more time and money. And so that's the part of the process. I mean, we just had a training with 30 counseling staff. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, they were like, oh my God, Allison, you got it. I go, well, I had to really work with the dean, the chair, and to even join their meeting. I mean, I had to really work with them to get them to do it so that because LA County is so critical, because we are military service members receive the second highest housing allowance in the state, $3,200 a month. So people want to come to school in LA County because of the housing allowance. And so we don't have the system in place to do them justice. And that's really my passion of what we're doing at West, is I know I have to do this for the rest of my district, because we're changing how we do the transcripting, how it interfaces with PeopleSoft. I mean, all these different things that is beyond the scope of my job description too. But this is a real passion, and it's important that we do this.
And it builds on itself. The more work you do, the better, the easier it becomes. The return on investment is pretty simple. It costs us about $35,000 to support a college with the technology, the culture, and the policy development. But if you give one student 15 units of credit, that's $35,000 worth of benefits saved. So it's pretty low barrier to meet that return on investment. One student, one semester meets your annual cost for that college.
We have Board Member Epstein, Chang, and then Brown.
I just want to understand this problem with transferring credits. So if the community college gives 15 units of credit for prior learning, and that student goes on to earn an associate degree, and then they try and transfer, does the CSU or the UC kind of look under the covers to see that some of this was credit for prior learning and they don't like that? Or how does that even emerge as an issue?
They're not really looking under the covers, but if they did, it would be right on the top page. So it would be right on the transcript. It would be clearly notated as CPL generated. And we've had assurances that they support this practice. They support the validity of it. It's all approved by disciplined faculty experts. There's not one articulation that's offered to a student, course articulation, that isn't approved by a disciplined faculty expert. And so that's the assurance. The faculty meet minimum quals who evaluate these. Those minimum quals assure that they have the qualifications needed to make that assessment. And I think the CSU honors that in both policy and practice, and has notified us that if they have any instances where a student is being denied credit on that basis, they want to know about it right away at the chancellor's office.
But what about the UC? You're saying the UC though?
UC is a different issue. Each UC, we encourage our colleges to work directly with each UC campus that the student is intending to go to, and not just that, but with the department, because each department will make different determinations. Some are looking to build access, and they really are excited about this. Others are impacted and they don't want to build access, so they're not so excited about this. But we do know that credit by exam is accepted at the UCs in all cases. So when push comes to shove, we can always offer that student credit by exam options that are transcribed.
Board Member Chang.
I have two questions. So do students who maybe the closest community college to them doesn't offer CPL, do they have the ability to go to another community college, get CPL awarded to them, and then go to the community college that doesn't award it, and then transfer with those two transcripts?
What a great question that is.
I was going to say, spoken from somebody who navigates the system.
I don't know when GE reciprocity came into being in our system, where each of the colleges recognized the GE credit granted at respective community colleges. We would like to see the same thing happen with CPL. So if Golden West College transcribes CPL for a service member and they come to Riverside City College, that would be honored. Now, we've not had any experience with this in the negative, so we haven't heard of any students being denied it, but we also don't have any assurance that it would be honored. So that's a little bit uncharted territory, and that's one of the agenda items we have on our advocacy list, is to advocate for reciprocity of CPL.
I do want to address this issue in a slight related issue. Is our college was just meeting last week when we were looking at the SCIF metrics. And all of those are tied to home college. Well, because we have a big family of 9, we are serving students who West is not their home college. And so our faculty are like, hey, wait a second. If I'm granting this person all this CPL, and then they go and even they graduate with our degree, and then I find out their home college is East, and East just got paid. We didn't get paid. And so now, it's not that we're going to deny them, but we are going to we're evaluating and assessing all of our students' home colleges up front to ensure that they have chosen West, because we need to get the SCIF metrics and that income. So that was because it's on all of the metrics. It's Pell. I mean, it's everything, and so that's something that we are including in our process now.
And then my second question was, the application to transfer is pretty confusing. Are these CPL classes clearly like on the application already for when students are filling out the CSU application?
They would be on their transcript. And so that when the student applies, they would submit their transcript and it would be notated on the transcript. And one of the things we're working on is standardized transcript notations. This field doesn't have a standard practice on that. And so it's one of the things we're looking at working with. We've convened another work group on standardizing transcription notations. And this will be AOs, articulation officers, working with evaluators and counselors on coming up with standards so that when it is on the transcript, it'll be in a way that's a standard fashion that can be easily recognized.
Board Member Brown.
So first, my old articulation brain is clicking. So for a lot of the CPL, it's associated with coursework that wouldn't have been accepted at the UC anyway. But so it's going to be a very discipline-specific sort of professional learning needed for the areas where it does. So for something like the student we saw with the aircraft, right, that they don't have classes like that at the UC, so it's a non-issue for that student. But for someone in a field like child development, it could become an issue if they do decide to go the UC route. So it's going to be a lot of professional learning, but I think that it's very manageable. And I think it's also sort of a sensible approach when we're thinking about UC transfer. It's just kind of how it works. So it's just sort of like one little slice where we have to still do things the traditional way. But if we can get this other 90% working like clockwork, let's do it. So I think that's kind of the way I view it. I also wanted to just say that overall, with what I'm hearing in this presentation, this is very typical of how things get done. In my experience in the California community colleges, we have this like all-star dean that's really passionate, and people like her end up moving on. And we've had like a one-time funding and an all-star dean that rallied people to do things outside of their job description. And we got a lot, of momentum. And then all-star dean moves off to other all-star things. And then what happens? So that slide about stable funding is so critical. And I just really wanted to reiterate their point. And I wanted everyone to notice, pretty much everyone that comes up here says the word articulation. The job description for articulation officers just continues growing. If you can imagine, I know Erin Benitez at West LA who's still teaching and doing this. So what happens is other things get pushed down the list of priorities, and everything else they're working on moves at a snail's pace. They care, they do care, they're interested, they want to do this work. But a lot of times articulation officers are going to say, I'm going to wait till all the regulations and guidance comes out before I even touch that. Right? Instead of saying, hey, let's innovate and start having these conversations, because they literally don't have time. So that stable funding piece is so critical. So I just want to reiterate, and also maybe taking a look at making sure that we have, I'm not sure what we can do as a body, but making sure we have deans that are assigned to this, making sure we have sufficient support, particularly for articulation, because this is going to bump right into other things coming, AB 1111, right, AB 928. Folks are already working on implementing the local general education changes. There's an initiative fatigue happening, and we're running on passion, and that's not enough for the long term.
So I'm going to kind of go out there with maybe a philosophical question that the chancellor and others, which is to your point, Board Member Brown, often in policy you have two choices. You hire more people to navigate a very complex system, or you make the system simpler. I really appreciate everything that you guys are doing, but it also strikes me as what a slog. And Tom said something earlier, and I think this is still what's happening, which is you're taking their prior learning and you're converting it into instructional hours. And my question is that the right measurement? You also mentioned UC does a challenge exam, and we as a board have often talked about the limits of exams and some of the inherent bias. So my question is, in this new economy, is instructional hours the right measure for all ways that we provide credit or show mastery? And I don't know. It's an academic question and a philosophical one, but I'd love to know your thoughts.
When we use the word hours, we really mean Carnegie units. And that is the measure we're using. And to tell you the truth, we rely on that because ACE has relied on that for 30 years, and we want to build off that huge amount of work of about 5,000 different credit recommendations for about 25,000 different ACE courses and trainings and occupations. So yeah, that is our measure that we're using. One, it is a slog, but it's a slog where every decision is recorded in a system and is now shareable by the colleges. So we can begin to develop an economy of scale where there's a lot of decisions already made. We just convened a group of 6 colleges to look at peace officer standards and training. All sworn law enforcement officers have to complete the academy, be certified. They analyze the training and recommend now 30 units of credit for all officers who complete post. That is being shared statewide so that all of the 116 community colleges who have ADJ programs can apply that to their curricula and offer that. Now that's work done that they can just capitalize on. There's 100,000 sworn officers in California. About 40% of those don't have an associate's degree. They are going to need it to promote, and they're going to need a bachelor's in order to qualify for chief someday. And so we see a huge opportunity here to build off the hard work of some and systematize it so that others can just share it easily later. That's what we're hoping to create that ecosystem of that makes good use of all the hard work.
Board Member Villalobos and then Board Member Haynes.
You know, it's incredible because just to put things in perspective, when I left the Marine Corps and I went to Long Beach City College, I was given 3 units for health and physical education. And I thought I was killing it, right? I have friends who are certifying officials who will actually sit down with every single student veteran and or dependent who's using the GI Bill, and they calculate their benefits to the day to try and figure out where they will be in 2 to 3 years from now and try to get ahead of it and figure out whether they are going to have to get student loans or apply for scholarships and all that. And so just off the top of my head, as a certifying official a few years ago, I remember several veterans that came up to me and we worked on that as well. I'm like, whoa, hell, you're 1 semester short or you're 2 semesters short, right? That this could have made such a huge difference for. And so I'm excited. You know, I'm very excited for it. I wish I could have used my work-study experience as CPL, but that's not the case. And that was a joke, by the way. But yeah, I'm very excited about it. You know, thank you for all the work that you do, and looking forward to see where this goes.
So I'm excited too, and I don't want what I'm about to say to belie that. The movement to recognize skills and trainings that are part of someone's work history, their learning history, is well overdue. But I think I want to add my comments to what our president just said, and I mean, there's discussions already abounding nationally around the Carnegie Unit. And I know that we're embedded in it, and so we can't, but we're in a position of we're all in, and at some point we're going to be asked or made to be all out, because the whole idea of education and what is valid and what is acceptable is changing before our very eyes. And so as long as we're kind of cognizant of that, and it may require some tweaking around the edges. Our students are looking in different places than just community colleges and universities, and there are people that are much smarter than me that says that as much as we care about education, everybody in this room cares about education, cares about students. That question of value is being asked, and the value of time and what one gets out of it. And so that is the sort of the overlay of the work that we're doing. And hopefully what we get out of this is how do we become much more agile, much more flexible, much more open to change within our system in a timely manner that really addresses the needs of what our students are there to get. Anyway.
Board Member Brown and then Board Member Medina.
I just wanted to speak to Casey's question, Board Member Ching. So sometimes with our curriculum, we'll have like the same curriculum across the entire state for a certain course. Other times there's a huge rift, and maybe the northern half does it one way and the southern half does it another way. And then we want to add in the layer of industry certifications. And so someone may be doing it a certain way, but they're not industry approved, and this other person's doing it another way, and they are industry approved. So there's all these little ways that we just don't want to do any harm, but I really love the idea of if it is the same, it should appear the same, and we should get the same credit, right? And we already have things in place like that for things like CID courses. So I really value what you brought up, and I hope that we can align as much as possible. Thanks.
So I want to take this opportunity to thank you for all your great work. There are 1.9 million students in the California Community College system, and I think we could all honestly say that veterans hold a special place in our hearts, obviously, for all the great work they do. Also, furthermore, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the majority, if not all, veterans tend to be adult learners, non-traditional students. So for that, obviously, that's also something that's very near and dear to my heart. Your work is increasing equity in our veterans, which is something really long overdue. Oftentimes veterans get the credit, but they don't get that full credit that they obviously need. So thank you. I'm sitting next to a veteran right now who's about to receive an award in a few days for all his great continued work that he's done, paying it forward to obviously other veterans, not just in the California Community College system, but throughout many. I know you worked at Chapman in the past, in many areas, and it's just outstanding, all the great stuff, work, obviously, that y'all doing. I mean, keep it up.
Thanks. With that, I'd like to open it up to public comment on the item.
The public comment period on item 6.2 is now open. Please use the raise hand feature to make a comment. You will be acknowledged and given the opportunity to address the board, and we'll have 2 minutes. I will hand it over to Vice President Aguinaldo to begin with public remarks in Sacramento.
Thank you very much, Andrea. We have just one public comment from Cheryl Aschenbach.
Thank you and good afternoon, President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Chancellor Christian, members of the board, Cheryl Aschenbach, President of the Academic Senate, changing my position apparently. I just want to say thank you to the work of the MAP project, and they mentioned at one point Academic Senate. The Academic Senate's been a partner of our CPL efforts statewide, going back to some of the early project work at Palomar and Norco, and then as it became the Military Articulation Project, certainly continuing with that work. I know they had a very successful CPL conference on Friday online, and we were asked to provide a opening comment, and we're always honored to speak in that place. I want to thank the board and the Chancellor's office also for committing to the further scaling of CPL. And I think you asked some great questions about why not more colleges, and we have a little bit more information about where we need to go. And I can't say enough as someone who both speaks to statewide leaders in the faculty as well as has talked to my own campus about how can we make this work better. It's just the information needs to get there, and the work that they're doing, especially talking with the CSU, with the UC, with different groups on each college's behalf, so the system's behalf, certainly lessens the lift later on. As Allison spoke, it's clear there's local effort that has to go into this, and you have to break ground and pull folks in, and you need a champion. And we have a few sitting here today. But it's always those questions about how will this transfer, what will the impact be, and the things that people have heard that are often incorrect.
30
but
seconds.
Until we have someone that has worked firsthand with the other system offices to say, no, your credits will transfer and we can make this work for you, then we get the assurance more locally to make that possible. So I just want to acknowledge the work, Dr. Lee, your team, and just the collaboration and the fact that you are continuing to recognize the role of faculty as discipline experts in these conversations. We'll continue to work with the MAP projects to help faculty further woven into our colleges understand how important this is for our students. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, is there any online public comment?
There is. We do have one hand raised. Stephen Petzold, you have control of your mic and can address the board.
Thank you very much. I found this discussion very enlightening. I do have a son that is currently in the U.S. military, and I just feel that you should do everything you can to promote the CPL, especially for military personnel. I enjoyed hearing from all of your speakers, and I could sense the serious nature that you gave this discussion. So with that, I would like to see College of the Canyons become a cohort college. How's that? And I will mute myself now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Really, really interesting. Next up, we have item 6.3, another Vision 2030 item, and we're going to be discussing the Student Veteran Mental Health Demonstration Project.
Good afternoon, President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo. Oh, I'm sorry.
Board Member Villalobos has a comment.
Sorry.
Sorry, no, that's right.
Yeah, you get to hear from me a lot today. I've been in the veteran space since 2004. I first started working with veterans as a work study student, again at Long Beach City College. Work with military families, before my official career with the veteran population and military families began in 2008. But I remember vividly that as a work study student, the very first issue I noticed that our student veterans were dealing with, myself included, was mental health, either as a result of combat experience or other types of trauma that they faced during their time in service. In many cases, it was due to transitioning from the military, not knowing whether they were going to have a place to stay or a paycheck, or housing for that matter, employment, I'm sorry. But the day that I realized how serious this issue was the day that one of my friends and also a fellow student veteran at LBCC took his own life. That's when everything really, truly clicked for me in terms of how massive of an issue this is. And just to put things into perspective, between 2001 and 2020, the Department of Veterans Affairs reported that more than 6,000 veterans died by suicide every single year between 2001 and 2020. And I know that for years, several community colleges have gone above and beyond. Their Veterans Resource Centers have gone above and beyond to ensure that veterans and military families have access to resources and support they need to succeed. But one of the many reasons why I'm extremely excited about this project is because it will establish and increase that local, regional, statewide, and intersegmental partnerships that are needed to improve and expand campus support and resources for these veterans. I think it goes without saying that our veterans and military families have sacrificed so much for us and for our country. And again, I want to take this opportunity just to thank the Chancellor's Office, the Chancellor, and every single other individual involved in this project, because looking at the work I do for a living now and thinking back to not just that individual, I won't say his name, but a friend I lost to suicide, one of several, by the way, I can imagine the benefit that will come from this particular project. And, I often tell people, we do what we do because we love the population and we know we can make a difference. We often don't get to see the after effect. But I think that the fact that we don't we allow families the benefit of not knowing what it's like to lose somebody to suicide. And I think that's one of the most important things for me. And so thank you for that. Thank you for everything you're doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Member Villalobos, for setting the context for why we need to pay special attention to veterans' mental health. And we're very fortunate to have your expertise and leadership on this board to continue to fight for all the necessary support for our student veterans. Good afternoon. Going back to President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Chancellor Christian, and members of the board, and welcome, Member Chang. So the item in front of you here is the student veterans mental health demonstration projects. Can I get the slide? Great, thank you. And I will be co-presenting this item today with Dr. Marshall Thomas, Veteran Affairs Director, CSU Office of the Chancellor, and Jessica Peak, Veteran Resource Center Director at East Los Angeles College. You'll hear from them virtually very soon. Presenting this demonstration project to you today is particularly meaningful as we just observed Veterans Day over the weekend, honoring all who served. We want to thank our military veterans, active duty, reservists, and their families for their sacrifice, courage, and commitment to serve this country. But I think more importantly, this recognition serves as a reminder of the ongoing support to support and honor them each and every day. There are estimated 1.8 million military veterans living in California, and the California community colleges have an opportunity to bring them in, serve them better, and that's why we're here today. Next slide, please. Before we dive into the demonstration project specifics, I want to just go through a few slides to provide you with context. Currently, we serve 50,000 service members and veterans, as well as over 37,000 military dependents and spouses. We have a few quotes here from our veteran students. They highlight some of the unique challenges of student veterans as they transition from a structured military life to civilian life. And I think that also was highlighted by Dr. Lee and then Member Villalobos. And why this is important to establish a robust support network when we talk about unconditional belonging for our student veterans. And the support network has to involve individuals who can connect with others who share similar experiences. Next slide, please. Also want to surface a statewide study on the state of student veterans within our system with a particular focus on mental well-being. As you can see, I think the first three key themes here are student veterans experience very similar challenges as other marginalized student populations around unmet needs in mental health and the lack of awareness or burden to access, right? And that's why the key focus area for student equity and support really have those areas in how do we bring access to additional services to our students, and how do we really think about streamlining the process to make sure that our students are accessing service burden-free. And I hear you loud and clear, President Costa, about the importance of partnership with local social safety net programs to ensure really the maximum receipt of the support. What I want to particularly point out, though, are the bottom three kind of themes highlighted in the report. One, the middle one, half of the survey student veterans expressed concerns about their own mental health. So it's really highlighting the significance of the challenge we're facing. And yet, the one on the left, most colleges have limited experience to support this population. Really think about the opportunity areas. And the third, which is a very interesting observation, is that over 2/3 of student veterans are aware of a federal veteran experiencing similar concerns, right? So that really underscores the shared experience and a network of awareness within this particular community, and that creates an opportunity for us for peer support and a collaborative approach to address these concerns. Next slide. So this is just more details about the mental health challenges our student veterans face. So depression, anxiety, PTSD, and loneliness are among the highest concerns for our population. Next slide, please. So real quick, here are the two major on-campus support infrastructures within our system. With the commitment and support from the governor and the legislature, veteran resource centers and mental health services both are receiving ongoing investments to provide services to support our students and veterans across the entire system. So when we think about the guided pathways principle and our push towards a student-centered ecosystem, we are seeing many colleges developing and maturing a closer partnership between these two programs and services. Next slide, please. So here's kind of an overview of our demonstration project. What I want to first point your attention to is the arrow on the bottom, right? This is a commitment we make to support the journey of student veterans. To one, to expand the canopy of learners, and then second, to ensure unconditional belonging. So the journey has to start before they even set foot on campus. And our commitment has to continue until they transfer, enters into the workforce, or emerge successfully into the next chapter of their life journey, right? So in terms of opportunities here, on the equity and access front, it's not just the 500,000 students we serve and the 36,000 families that we serve, but also the 1.8 million veterans currently living in California, right? And then on the equity and success front, 81% of the CSU student veterans transfer from a community college. So when we are thinking about both ends, that's why equity and support has to be that important third leg in the stool for us to really think about how to holistically support this population. So specifically with this demonstration project, there are 3 components, essentially responding to the learning we had from that earlier report. How do we deepen veteran-centered professional development opportunities to our colleges and support them then in developing institutional competency to support our veteran students, right? So it's not just the Veteran Resource Center. It's not just the mental health services, but really across the entire continuum of student support. How do we engage veteran students with a deeper understanding of their lived experience? Right? And then the second piece is how do we leverage the existing awareness and interconnectedness among student veterans to scale that effective support network through a peer-to-peer model? And then the third, which is not the last, but how do we strengthen external partnership that are already existing in place, right? So loop back into the journey. How do we partner with local military bases to outreach with services during pre-enrollment? Right? How do we expand and mature partnerships with health systems and community health organizations in the area of mental health? And then also strengthen intersectional partnerships so then we can successfully support them with their transfer efforts. Next slide, please. I'm going to now turn it over to my co-presenters to dive into the details of these 3 components. Dr. Marshall?
Good afternoon, everyone. What a great day to be here. As we've just wrapped up a Veterans Day weekend, I am so excited to be sitting on this end of a computer screen and listening to the board of governors of the community college system continue to celebrate veterans and the support that they're going to give them. Now, about 14 years ago, when the post 9/11 GI Bill was passed, colleges and universities around the state and around the country began to open veterans resource centers to support veterans and other military affiliated students on their campuses. And that was fantastic. And we knew we would get great services within those veteran resource centers and at the school certifying officials' desks. Folks like the board member Villalobos there helping students who came to the job with knowledge about veterans. The challenge, of course, then became, what about everyone else on campus? How are we supporting student veterans at the financial aid window? How are we supporting veterans in the classroom? The reality is that most folks who work on a community college or university campus don't have any military experience. They don't have knowledge about military culture. And so a program was developed called the VetNet Ally Program. And the idea was to create a faculty and staff awareness program in order to educate members of the university and college campuses about veterans. And in doing so, that would foster a supportive campus atmosphere for those military affiliated students and veterans. And then, of course, in doing that, we wanted to make sure that the students on the campus recognized that there was a network of allies for those veterans on campus. So people who attend the VetNet Ally Program receive a decal that they can place on their office space or an image they can put on their syllabi in order to let veterans know that not only are they supported, but the person who displays that symbol has taken the time to learn about them. So this VetNet Ally program is a half-day program. that covers a variety of topics, including veterans by the numbers, learning about how many veterans there are both nationally and in the state, learning about why people join the military to begin with, and then, of course, learning about the cultural components of military service that not only impact people while they are in the military, but also can impact them as they go through life as well. Talk a lot about the challenges for veterans in higher education, including some of the traumatic experiences that were mentioned earlier in the introduction to this section. Talk about why some of our student veterans want everyone to know that they're a veteran, and why others may want to fly under the radar and not let anyone know, even though they are very proud of their service. And of course, we want to talk about the ways that we are helping veterans in higher education, and leave those who participate in the program with some really solid advice on ways to respond to veterans, both in the classroom and in other areas on campus. Now, this program began as a student project at Cal State Long Beach and a doctoral program 14 years ago. Today, it's been presented at over 60 colleges and universities, both here in California and throughout the United States. So I'm very proud of what the program has done, and it's nice to continue to be able to present what I would consider an engaging and informative program to colleges and universities around the country. I think each time we do this program, we ask folks for some feedback, and I'd like to share my favorite feedback I've ever received from someone who attended this program. And they said, "This was fantastic. We could have had soggy tuna fish sandwiches and cold coffee, and I would have still come out of this presentation raving about it and feeling motivated to work with our military students." And so folks who have attended then go back into the work that they do in support of student veterans. And as I just sit here and listen to Dr. Lee talk about credit for prior learning, getting that kind of buy-in from faculty and staff across the country also helps support initiatives like that and other ways that we support veterans across the curriculum. So thank you for having me today, and I'll turn the mic back over to you.
I think I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to kind of talk about the peer-to-peer model.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. My name is Jessica Peak. I am the East Los Angeles College Veterans Resource Center Director and Counselor. I've been serving veterans and military-connected students at ELAC for 10 and a half years. So definitely invested in my role. I've worked with Dr. Marshall Thomas before. He has brought VetNet Ally to our campus and to other campuses within LACCD. And we've always welcomed his program to our campus with open arms. We love it, absolutely love it. ELAC serves approximately 700 student veterans, not including military and dependent students. That number would be larger. We are a one-stop, our VRC is a one-stop shop. We offer holistic services anywhere from academic counseling to VA certifications to peer-to-peer tutoring, a food pantry. We offer just so much more as well, veteran-specific events as well. We do have direct points of contact throughout our campus and ongoing partnerships with currently 23 veteran organizations and programs. That's just between our VRC and those existing partnerships. Our mission at the VRC is to support student veterans, service members, dependents, and spouses from pre-enrollment through completion or transfer. So 2 essential components I do want to speak on today that our VRC offers are the Peer Advisor for Veteran Education, PAVE program, and U.S. Vets Outside the Wire Wellness Counseling Program. So let's start with PAVE. So in 2016, our VRC implemented a peer mentor program. It was pretty unstructured. We hired our peer mentors based on, who wanted to work at the VRC, who wanted to give back to our veterans, to their own veteran brothers and sisters, who just wanted to be a part of our VRC community and leading the way. And so for the most part, our mentor program was great. It built our camaraderie. It built a strong community, but we never really had the structure in terms of a platform. So in 2022, fall of 2022, the PAVE program opened up a grant program, and they offered pretty much free trial membership, I guess you can say, free membership through the PAVE program to 13 Western regional campuses. We were able to earn one of those grants, and we became a PAVE campus. So there are currently 46 PAVE campuses nationwide, 8 of those being California community colleges and 3 CSUs. Since fall 2022, our student veteran outcomes have increased substantially within this past year, between fall 2022 to the end of spring 2023. The majority of student veterans do want to transfer, and our peer advisors do serve as our role models for that. I'll talk a little bit about our structure, and then I do want to go into some data about those outcomes. So within our VRC, our structure of PAVE, we have 6 peer advisors. Those peer advisors are offered training through PAVE. We do have a platform where it's structured case management. They log in the engagement that they have with veterans that are assigned to them at the beginning of each term. They continue with our engagement, whether it's through email, whether it's through phone calls, in-person contacts, and they just make sure that our brand new students and also those that are at a 2.0 or lower, considered at-risk students, are offered the guidance through PAVE. Once our student veterans, who are peer advisors, document into the log, we're able to also access to see what are the top topics that are covered in those engagements, and what does exactly our VRC need to make sure that we're offering events and workshops that correlate with what the needs of our veterans happen to be. Between fall 2022 through spring 2023, we did have 85 outreach logs that were completed by our peer advisors. 43 were actual interactions. And unfortunately, many in-person or phone or virtual live chats don't get logged depending on peak times. So we actually have a lot more than that. Just one example of an actual peer advisor log. This came straight from a peer advisor who wrote into our system. Student approached me about getting into trouble with law enforcement over the weekend and needing guidance for legal aid. I referred student to VPAN and legal aid offices in close vicinity to the school. I also asked if the student had support systems in place to lean on for emotional help, and student reassured me that they did. Student said they are going to inform supervisor at work about incident, and I asked to be informed of the outcome if they are comfortable with me getting an update. They agreed. Student was reminded to seek additional help should they need it, and I will check back in next week to make sure they are maintaining school and work life as well despite these new issues. So that's actually documentation from one of our peer advisors after assisting a student veteran from their list who came to them. The outcome from that, after checking in with the student the following week, the peer advisor did connect the student to our wellness counselor who works at our VRC from US Vets Outside the Wire. So ever since we implemented PAVE in fall 2022, just want to share some really great numbers with you. In fall 2022, we have 659 veterans at ELAC. The retention rate for our veterans, 92%. Our success rate that semester, it drops, 74%. Spring 2023, after having PAVE during fall 2022 and now spring 2023, our retention rate stayed the same, 92%. Our success rate, however, jumped up by 7% to 81%. That was between us first implementing PAVE fall 2022. By the end of spring 2023, we saw a full 7% success rate increase from our student veteran population. I do want to add also that in comparison with our general population, there was a 9% higher success rate increase from fall 2022 to spring 2023. So just wanted to add that in because the power of our peers is amazing. The next program I do want to speak on is our US Vets Outside the Wire program. So US Vets Outside the Wire has been with us also since 2016. That's when we first implemented it. They are structured. They do provide partnerships with 14 campuses in LA and Orange County. All 14 are California community colleges. At ELAC, the way that looks, eight students are assisted by our wellness counselor, which they cover 1 hour appointments each week, 2 days a week. Telehealth is available on other days, just in case our wellness counselor is not available or doesn't have any time, because she's booked on the days that she's there. And so she actually will schedule our students in for other days during the week virtually. She also attends VRC events and engages with students in the lounge, and services are available to students and also to our alumni, because our alumni will come back and ask if we offer any type of mental health counseling, if we still have a wellness counselor on site. We have a lot of different strategies to make sure the engagement is there between our students and utilizing our US Vets Outside the Wire services. But I do want to say that one success factor with our program is that she is always booked. Our wellness counselor is always booked. There is a need to offer additional hours. Peer advisors have used our US Vets Outside the Wire services, and they share their own positive experience when referring students. So I think that seeking support for mental health is not something, it's never something or anything to be ashamed of or reluctant about, but it helps when their peers are encouraging one another to use the services. When we are finding ourselves at capacity with our mental health services, we do reach out to our service partners, which include our ELAC Health Center on campus, our VA community-based outpatient clinic, our VA vet centers, LA County Department of Mental Health Veteran Peer Access Network. They provide case management for housing and basic needs. They're at our VRC 2 times per week. And oftentimes our mental health that we see with our students and the worry and the anxiety comes from not having their basic needs met. So having VPAN at our VRC does help. LA County Office of Military and Veterans Affairs for our veterans who are seeking disability claims and the additional stressors. And when we have crisis intervention, we do connect with our Veteran Mental Evaluation Team, VMAT, which is a program offered in partnership with LA County Sheriff's Department and the VA. Finally, I think one of our biggest service partner, who happens to be internal, is our ELAC Veterans Club. Camaraderie is powerful. So we make sure that we connect our student veterans with the camaraderie that is there and that is very strong within our ELAC veteran community. And Rebecca?
Thank you, Jessica. So I saw all the board members' ears perked up when you talked about all the outcomes and all the success, right? The peer-to-peer model as well as the partnership is creating. So I think that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish with the demonstration project. So team behind the scene, would you please pull the slides back up? The last slide, please. So what we are really hoping to do, right, from the demonstration project, it has to be a small scale. So what we are hoping to do is to support up to 10 colleges on a 2-year grant, $150,000 each, starting in 2024, to really focus on the thriving, maturing kind of vision, kind of veteran resource center infrastructure. So colleges that are already doing great work supporting supporting veteran students, and how do we get to the next level, right? How do we help them mature the program design for the existing resources on campus and really focus on veteran student center redesign across the system. So let's say for colleges, once they receive the VetNet Ally training, what does that look like? How do we then get to the next level, get to the action, have colleges support them develop action plans and identify areas in their student support infrastructure that that could benefit from this additional training, right? And then how does that then influence behavior and processy changes to make sure that we're better support our students, right? And then also talking about the formal partnership, how do we increase additional formal partnership on campus and then also more importantly off campus with social safety net programs. And then peer-to-peer engagement strategy is a key strategy for equity and support across the board. So how do we use a demonstration project as the incubator to mature effective peer-to-peer models? And then how do we implement innovative outreach strategies for transitioning service members, right? So again, speak to the equity and access piece. So there are a lot of different things that we can test through supporting the maturing models to get to the next level. And then what's really important is translate these outcomes into a scalable solutions for our system. So then from there, we want to develop system level resources so every college can benefit from it. How do we also deliver professional development opportunities, not just the VetNet Ally program, but also how do colleges then leverage the training to really redesign their support structure? And then how do we establish collaborative networks across on campus and also across our system among colleges? And then institutional capacity is critical. Every college needs to have institutional capacity to serve our student veterans. So how do we continue to foster that relationship through outcomes or through the outcomes from the demonstration project and create artifacts and create continuous professional development to sustain the momentum and sustain the effort? So that kind of concludes our presentation, but I'm happy to take any questions and comments the board has.
Thank you. Colleagues, questions? Board Member Villalobos.
Mine is just a comment. It's exciting to hear about Outside the Wire, of a professional connection to that program since it used to be my program while I was a U.S. vet. So I'm happy to hear and see that they've continued to grow that program and take it to the next level.
Thanks, Board Member Haynes.
So thank you so much for the presentation. So as a trustee, I know we have our vet centers. We have 4 colleges and we have 4 vet centers. And I just would like to plug that there's a lot of data that I'm assuming that our colleges have on our veteran students. And I'm trying to figure out, I know that the CEO, president of CCLC is in the room. It'd be really helpful for our trustees. I'll speak for myself. It's been a while since I've asked for that particular data. And as we were talking earlier this morning about this particular presentation, as well as the prior presentation, it would be really helpful, I think, for trustees to get that data. My initial question was, how many of our vets are transferring? But there's also this other layer. And just to ensure that all of the services that should be afforded them, not just on the federal side because of service, but that are available to them on our campuses, and for us to know that it's happening on our campuses. So that's a comment as opposed to a question.
Thanks. Yes, Vice President Aguinaldo.
I really enjoyed the presentation. My question was around what outcomes we're looking for. Because if the program is supposed to encompass these certain methods, say outreach, establishing formal partnerships, et cetera, what exactly are we trying to get out of that partnership? If it's increased utilization, then we want to offer more staff to be a resource. We want their time cards their dance card to be full. I'm using terminology I don't really know what that means. The dance card to be full. You know, if it's increased mental health outcomes, then that is a different area of focus. So what are the metrics? What are the outcomes we're looking for?
That's a great question. I think really what we're looking at is access is a really important one. So there are really 2 layers of it. How do we bring additional capacity to serve the veteran student, like student veterans, right? So then that will be kind of leveraging resources on campus, and then more importantly is connecting with creating external partnership to bring that additional capacity on campus to support our students. but then also at the same time, the burden of accessing, right? So if you look at the earlier study around student veterans, the question of like I'm unaware of the services available on campus, or I don't know how to access them, is very similar, right, to many of our students who are accessing services. So how do we then, thinking about veteran student center redesign, so how do we leverage the veteran resource center as well as thinking about other parts of the support ecosystem where we can embed more expertise to serve student veterans. So then through systems change, we can also remove burdens, right? So those are kind of the some of the metrics we're thinking about. But I think another really important part is the details really matter, right? So I think no one would disagree that partnership is important. No one would disagree that peer-to-peer support is important. But how do we do that? I think there are questions, right? So, and I would say traditionally, what we have done as a system is here are some best practices, figure out locally, right? And I think this demonstration project is kind of bringing more focus into the how. So once we are seeing the accomplishments of these thriving programs with their outcomes, we're able to say, by evidence, we can see these models, when implemented this way locally, will accomplish results. And here's the documentation of that, and here's how we want to then deploy very focused professional development to support system-level upskilling in this area and upscaling in this area, right, to make sure our student veterans are properly served.
I appreciate that. If we're looking at increased utilization or increased awareness, that's one thing. But what happens if we are not thinking about resource constraints and we have every resource available to us under the sun? What is the metric that we want to see 2 or 3 iterations down the line? I'd love to see us really focus on improving mental health and that to be the focused outcome.
That's a really good question. I think for us, continue to think about what our role is, I think as a campus-based support system, and as well as a very clinical focused mental health system that's also outside of higher education, right? I would say as an entry level, I would say our response rate has to go up, right? So for every student veterans who are looking for, frankly, all students, when they're seeking mental health services, they are able to receive service, right? Either that it be triage or clinical service, right? At the time that they need it. That is the metric I think we have to get to, right? But then to assume that our system can do end-to-end is unrealistic. So how do we think about the continuum, really identify our sweet spot? And I think that quick response rate has to be there.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Board Member Medina.
So thank you for having this presentation. I'm going to speak to it from my academic personal experience. I'm a student at East Los Angeles College, where Jessica Peak works at, and East Los Angeles College has a primarily Latino population. The reason I mention that because there's a really big stigma in seeking mental health services within the Latino community, let alone being a Latino veteran, obviously. Now, with that being said, lost my thought here for a second. With that being said, what type of, like you mentioned about the different partnerships that obviously exist in collaboration between East Los Angeles College and other veteran services and all that. There's one thing that I've actually talked to students in the past, and they say they reach a point like after like only like 3 and 4 appointments are actually maxed out in the number of mental health treatment that they're able to seek. Now, how does that work? Because you mentioned so many different like partnerships that, like, for example, that some, like in this case, East Los Angeles College have, do you have other further, I don't know if Jessica's still here, obviously, listening to this presentation, in which students could actually seek additionally, aside from the mental, obviously, telenet health services that exist? Or I don't know if you kind of get my question.
I'm going to try it, and if I miss it, please ask follow-up questions. I think I don't really have the specific details campus-wise, but I think part of the demonstration project is to support these colleges to create a regional resource map. So to say, like, in our region, here are the available services, and then frankly, that creates an opportunity for campuses then to understand what is the realistic gap for us to fill. And then we have to be realistic of, like, generally there is a mental health service gap, for example. It's a crisis, right, nationally, especially in California. So then how do we jointly advocate, right, for resources, but being very clear on the gap, right? Because now we have done the work. And then also, I think that also supports our external partnership exploration, and then also finalizing what will be the best group of partnership we should be actively seeking to kind of fill that gap. I think that's really important. And I think you also hit on a really important point around culturally competent mental health services, right? And I think part of it is, again, it's also a larger issue, all right, on the equity in healthcare workforce. We're not seeing necessarily that type of diversity happening right now in the healthcare provider space, right? But then that's why I think the peer-to-peer model really comes in, fill an important void there, right, to kind of bring that cultural competency. But then I think we also have, I'm under the gun for Chancellor Christian to also come up with a kind of a mental health strategy, right, for our system. Then we have to think about what community colleges can play in the role of supporting, right, equitable workforce development in the mental health space to support the state of California. So we're kind of in the both place of a demand and supply, but tremendous opportunity there.
If I may also add, I'm still here. Jessica Peak from ELAC. I just wanted to add and just point to the stigma, and also with our Latino population. We do have a very high Latino population. Our veteran population, it's more diverse, definitely, even at ELAC. But when we started working with U.S. Vets Outside the Wire back in 2016, we had a lot more combat veterans. So with our combat veterans, we weren't filling our appointments. It was really a hard reach for various reasons. They didn't need the help, is what they said. They didn't need the help. They weren't going to see any therapist. The stigma was there. So in order to establish some type of foundation to really encourage that they visit with our wellness counselor, we did a few things. So what we did back then was, instead of referring to our therapist assigned to us, we changed it to wellness counselor. So they have an academic counselor. Why not give them a wellness counselor? So we changed the name of that service provider, and they were okay with it. And I do believe that U.S. Vets Outside the Wire uses wellness counselors till this day with other campuses now as well because of its effectiveness. So that was one way to sort of like ease that stigma. Another thing we did was, and what we still do today, we don't ask our veterans or service members, dependents, to schedule their appointments with our wellness counselor at our front desk. We don't. They have the direct number to our wellness counselor, and they'll establish and create their appointments with her directly. So it keeps the confidentiality there, and it also prevents them from feeling any type of hesitancy to seek that appointment. And finally, we have 2 doors at our VRC. We only use the front door for access. The back door, we strategically placed our guest office, which is where our wellness counselor runs her appointments through. We placed that office next to the back door. So back in 2016, we encouraged veterans, anyone, if you don't feel comfortable walking across the VRC, entering through the front to get to your appointment, make the arrangement with your wellness counselor to enter through the back. And they've done that. So since 2016, those 3 different pieces built that foundation of trust with our vets. And it really has broken those walls from stigma in using our mental health services at ELAC specifically. And we continue to use them.
Mine is just kind of an editorial comment, which is that I hope that this and the previous demonstration project are linked when you guys think about who gets grants. We all know there's no silver bullet. It's a variety of policies that really get all of our students, including our veterans, across the finish line to their educational goals. And so, I think, in addition to mental health, our veterans, like all students, just need to know there's a path, and that it is a reasonable path that isn't going to take me forever to get to a good paying, high wage job. So anyway, hopefully there's like a preference point for districts that are doing both. With that, I'm going to open it up to the public for any comment on this item.
The public comment period on item 6.3 is now open. We will begin with public comments in Sacramento. If you are calling in, press *9. You'll have 2 minutes. President Costa, we have not received any in-person remarks and no hands are raised on this item.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation. Appreciate it. Next up, we have another information item. This is going to generate some excitement from my colleagues, I know. We've talked about this quite a bit. It's obviously one of the planks in Vision 2030, and it is a discussion about generative AI. We're going to have a work session today, and we have a couple of experts with us to guide us on this conversation.
Great. I'll get us started, and then I'm going to punt it to Board Member Darius Anderson. Scott O'Neill, welcome. Good to see you here with the Board of Governors. Quick updates. Since we last met, the Foundation for California Community Colleges has invested in a position to help the foundation and the Chancellor's office move the work. So really grateful to the foundation. Also grateful to our faculty and to Craig for continuing the webinar series. Thank you very much. Started a conversation with our new board member, Casey, to see if maybe we could do a student webinar series. So we might have a student series starting as well. In the meantime, our board member, Darius Anderson, has got big ideas of what we could potentially do with this topic. So we've added a four-part board educational series, and today in November is the first kickoff to the series with two guests. But before we get to our guests, let me turn it over to our leader, Board Member Anderson.
Leaders very loosely, to be clear. I want to say thanks to the Chancellor. First of all, the great work that the staff is doing and to be open to going ahead and having a panel. And I think both Pam and Amy referenced the fact that, we are all confronted with this idea of what will learning be in the future, and AI is going to have a dramatic impact. And I think for some of us, there's an innate excitement about what we're about to see. And for some of us, there's a real fear. And I think we have to look at how is it going to impact our students? How is it going to impact our classified employees? How is it going to impact our professors? And I think that, we are at the precipice. And one of the things I talked to the Chancellor about is we have some amazing professors internally at the system, but there's so many resources in California, especially in the Bay Area, that are leading this effort in every single category: healthcare, social media, national defense, all of these things that will have an impact on us. And I felt in working with the Chancellor's office, we could go ahead and pull together some educational lectures for us to be able to ask questions from some of the best and brightest in the industry to help us frame, because I think that, this time period will have a dramatic impact on the future of this system, and they will look back and say, did this board do the right thing as it related to AI, or did they do the wrong thing? And I hope and I'm the leader.
You're the leader, either way, we're blaming you, Darius.
Yeah, so I'm the one to blame. But I just want to thank the staff, the Chancellor, and everybody else, because I think this is really one of those exciting topics that brings out a lot of energy, ideas, and so forth. So, Chancellor, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is my micro? Oh, there we go. Let me bring it a little closer. Thank you very much. And thank you, Chancellor Christian, President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, and board members for having us here today to talk about this critically important topic in this time window that we have available to us. As I think we all know, generative AI has taken the world by storm, and it's probably not too much to say. It feels like a tidal wave sometimes hitting us, and we just turn on the television or open up a news article, and there's something about AI. Or maybe that's just my news feed these days, but yeah, I think I see heads nodding. ChatGPT reached 100 million users within 2 months of launch. That's incredible. It's a record. It's 4.5 times faster than TikTok hit 100 million users, and 13 times faster than Instagram hit 100 million users. So I think it's an indicator of the hunger and the value that we're finding, society in general, all of us are finding in generative AI, including our students. I think they're onto something. because depending on the month and the poll, between 1/3 and 3/4 of our students are already using generative AI for their studies. So I think what this tells us is that we need to be partnering widely with our colleges, with the field, with faculty, as we are with the webinar series, with our colleagues in the room, Wendy Brill-Weinkoop and Cheryl Aschenbach, and our technology thought leaders, as we are today. So to deliver on 3 things: 1, professional development; 2, research and development; and 3, policy and guidance that's desperately needed by the field as we swing between this pendulum of excitement and fear. And we see that regularly. I mean, we kind of trend towards excitement, but there's definitely this sort of soupçon of fear and anxiety around that as well. So with that, we have 2 guest speakers with us today. One will be joining us virtually online. Secretary of Government Operations, Amy Tong, will be joining us. And here in person, we have Mr. Scott O'Neill. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Scott O'Neill. He has a storied career, most recently retired from his role as Naval Air Warfare Center Weapons Division's Executive Director. I hope I got that right. After over 40 years of federal service. Earlier in his career as an engineer, his work on missile vector control was critical to developing the Tomahawk missile, which you may have heard of, and other precision strike capabilities. He has enjoyed a reputation as an effective administrator whose areas run like a well-oiled machine. As a senior administrator and now as a consultant, Mr. O'Neill has trained his formidable focus on future opportunities and capabilities. He joins us today to share his thoughts on the potential of artificial intelligence as a critical technology of the future and the present. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Wow. First off, I'd like to say thanks for inviting me, President Costa and Vice President Aquilina and Chancellor Christian. Nice to see you again, Shania. So yeah, first off, I want to make sure you understand, I'm speaking here as Scott O'Neill, not representing any DOD or any kind of an agency like that. But I think it is important. I'm really excited about this group getting more interested in trying to get out in front of AI. And I agree. I mean, I think there's some huge opportunities and there's some huge fears, especially in the world of weaponry. And so I think it's really good to stop and think about this problem and opportunity and try to keep it in context. And then also try to see how do we proceed forward as far as an educational system in this country. And so I'm really excited about being here to talk to you about this. In 2017 and 2018, after I retired, I was on the Navy's Research Advisory Committee. And we actually studied, this is almost a decade ago now, we actually studied about how the Navy should go forward in getting involved in AI. And I'm going to talk about one of the findings because I think it's critical, and I think it's also an area where you all can help. It's in the area of data. Okay, all these systems only get trained by data. And I would tell my counterparts when I was on the research committee is that the military is not, AI is not new to the military because we've always had AI. They're called sailors and soldiers. You know, we train them the same way. We put them through classes, we give them a lot of data, and when they fail or do wrong, then we correct them, okay? And so it's really kind of the same process, but it's a lot faster, and it's a lot, I almost said the word powerful. I don't know if it's more powerful, but there's a lot of worries with it too. And so anyways, I think it's important. I want to talk about 2 kinds of AI. I want to talk about generative AI or analytical AI, and then I want to talk about operational AI. Okay, because the generative or the analytical is more along the lines of prediction. How do I predict a behavior? And so, and then the operational side is more about how do I do something? Kind of like the automated cars right now. It's that kind of an application. And both of them have huge impact to the Defense Department and also to aerospace in general. But both of them require vast amounts of data to train them. Okay? I mean, orders of magnitude more than we're talking about today as time goes forward. It's going to be really, a very, it's going to demand more and more data. It's going to be exponential. And our data needs to be well managed, okay, so we can use it properly. And then there's also needs for testing and validation, whatever systems go forward. And I think that's really important. But when we were studying for the NRAC, we visit a lot of universities and a lot of companies that are working in AI. And what was really exciting there's a lot of research going on in corrective systems in AI. So building into the AI itself ways, checks and balances. So I think that's really important too, to understand. And that research is going to be really exciting because it's going to help us understand when they're not behaving properly or where they're behaving sinisterly, in a sinister way. And so I think that's important research. And then, of course, in the operational side, you see it already going on in a lot of warfare. You're seeing a lot more drones, and you're seeing those kind of systems that are getting out there. But still today, those have a man in the loop. Okay, and so so that's something that you're going to continue to see evolve, and I think that's something that the military's working on. But again, it's currently always with a man in the loop. And so let's talk about where it's going to be adopted first. I think it's going to be adopted in our management systems, our training systems, our logistical systems first. Okay? Because, our management systems, and I think every organization, including an organization like China Lake, is going to eventually develop their own AI tools to support their area of expertise. And so each organization is going to have to collect its own data, or they're already collecting their data. They're going to have to organize their own data so they can get out of that data the outcomes that they're really interested in. For example, one of the areas is, let's just talk about contract management. We go out and we ask contractors to do a lot of work in developing new weapon systems. And we make decisions on those based on their proposals. But I can envision AIs that look at the state of technology across the board. I can look at AIs that look at past performance. And I think we can do a better job of making a prediction of how successful a particular contract's going to be based on the state of the technology, based on the performance in the past and things like that. So that's a tool that's, could be universal, but it's also going to be very specific to an area of discipline. So I think that's important to know that when we're talking about AI, it's not just generically. I see a lot of specific applications of AI, just like you do in ChatGPT. They're all very specific, but yet you train them with a fairly broad database. And so I can envision the same kind of thing going on in some of the defense tools that we need, our management tools around financial control even, and things like that. So I think that you're going to see in an area of preventative maintenance, in aerospace in general, being able to collect a lot of data on our aircraft systems and our systems that support our aircraft, and also in the world of defense, and trying to forecast when things are going to fail sooner, so you can get out in front of those failures and you can build in systems that fix those before they actually manifest themselves as a failure. And then I can see things in quality control, manufacturing control. Right now we do a lot of statistical process controls in manufacturing, but those are based on, data sets that we think intuitively are the ones we need to pay attention to. Or I think AI can give us a lot more insight into what's really going on in the manufacturing process and focus our attention a little bit more keenly. You can think about air traffic control, doing air traffic control support. Again, there's man in the loop, but I can imagine down the road that a lot of those systems are going to be observed and there's going to be a lot of participation by AI in those kind of systems to help us understand where there's a pending threat. And so I think air traffic control is going to be another one. Battlefield management support is going to be another one. There's a lot more bad actors in the world. So nominating targets and screening targets and trying to just observe what's going on in the battlefield and get out in front of what's developing. And then you can postulate or propose solutions or strikes or things to the leadership so that they can make the final decision in a more informed way and subtle way. So I think there's a lot of those kind of opportunities. I mean, the battlefield's getting more and more complex, as you can just see around the world. And so trying to understand where there's, things are emerging, understanding what's been used already and what our inventories look like, being able to do better strike planning. But they're all decision-making efforts. And I think that's where the application in defense is going to be first. I do worry with you that there's going to be robotic autonomous vehicles that are going to be dangerous and could threaten mankind. And I do think that there's going to be research continuing to go on in autonomy. But I tell you right now, the way the defense departments are approaching it, and I think way is very, very cautious, is that they're continuing to look at man in the loop, so that there's actually some authority that's overseeing these things. And I think that's going to persist as we go forward. In the area of, in another area where DoD is really moving aggressively is in what they call model-based systems engineering. We've got bigger and bigger and more complex systems. And trying to understand how those systems work together is less and less certain. So I think AI tools are going to help us understand that. And it's going to help us design some of those larger systems, more robustly. And then also, right now, for example, we're creating digital twins, which are digital representations of the actual systems that get put in the field. And so then they're using those digital systems to make decisions on where we can do design improvements based on what's going on with with how those tools are going to be used. And so there's a lot of opportunity, I think, in AI in trying to manage some of those kind of aspects of our weapon systems. You look at things that are going on right now, even the B-21, the brand new bomber that's being built by the Air Force. It's going to have a man in it, but it's also going to be autonomous to a degree. So you can fly it without a man. You can fly it more like a drone. Now, they're not going to let go of it. There's always going to be a man in the loop in the decision-making, but it can be pilotless. And I think you're going to see more and more of our weapon systems that are going to go in that direction. We're building underwater, systems that are not manned. We're building more aircraft, drones that you see in operations today that aren't manned. But right now, they all use basically waypoints. They go to different spots in the sky or in the ocean, and that's the way they're going to continue to work in the future. But what they see and what they address is going to be really influenced by AI. And so you can get an idea of how those applications are going to go forward, but it's all based on data, as I said at the very beginning. And the DoD and the aerospace industries collect huge amounts of data today. And a lot of times we don't take care of it very well. We're not very good at classifying it. We're not very good at understanding its age, if you will. How pertinent is it still today? Not very good at securing it and transporting it. All of those things that go with making data valuable to really give us intelligence are things that we've got to improve on. And I think those are some areas that our California community colleges can help us with, just like you did in the world of cyber. You had a major role in helping us scale up to take care of cyber systems, and you're continuing to do that. I can envision the same thing with AI, particularly in data management, library sciences, all of those critical things that go into helping us organize, helping us classify, and all of our data. And we need to be able to timestamp it. We need to be able to trust it. We need to understand its vulnerability. We need to understand its senescence. How pertinent is it today? How up-to-date is it? How current is it? How timely is it? All of those things go into good data management. And those are skills that we've really got to learn today, I think, to really bring them into what we're going to need in the world of AI in the future. And so I do envision that, the management systems are going to kind of lead the way in how the DoD and how our aerospace industries adopt this technology and use it. And from those management systems, they'll build trust in the systems, they'll build checks and balances in the system, and they'll give them more of a warfighting capability as we go forward.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I think we could take questions now, or we could wait till the end. Take the. Let's go to. Okay, let's go. Can we bring up? Is Amy on Zoom? Oh, okay, great.
I'm here.
Oh, okay, there you are. Welcome. A quick introduction. I'm very pleased to welcome Secretary Amy Tong, she is our Secretary of Government Operations, of course, for the state of California. Her previous role was as the state's Chief Information Officer and Director of the California Department of Technology. She is a noted champion of user-centered design. She has led efforts to modernize the state's cloud strategy, technology procurement, open data, workforce development pipeline, and cybersecurity measures. Secretary Tong joins us today to share her perspective and insights on the growing potential and challenges of artificial intelligence technology. Over to you, Secretary Tong.
Thank you, Craig. Good afternoon, members of the board. Good afternoon, everyone. It's such a pleasure to address you this afternoon. And thank you, Chancellor Christian, for inviting me after we literally met at the airport not too long ago. Governor Newsom appointed me to his cabinet as the secretary to lead the Government Operations Agency back in March of 2022. Following a career in the state service and technology leadership positions, including, you heard earlier, I was the state chief information officer. So what does government operations, what do we do? We have a portfolio of state's human resources management, facility procurement, technology innovation. We also oversee the state revenue from income tax and sales and use tax, as well as the public pension. We have the state largest statewide fiscal system and additional services such as supporting victims in their most difficult time. And one of those probably most connected or interested to you all is the Cradle to Career, which is an education system that we are in the process of building. I'm very proud to be serving in this role as I am a first-generation immigrant who came to California with my family from China when I was a teenager. Settling in Sacramento and making my way in American culture that was foreign to me. As so many immigrants like me, community college are the vital pathway for upward mobility. I myself was a student of Sacramento City College many years ago. And I'm so grateful for all what you do to serve millions of young adults and help them on their way to a better life and greater opportunities. Your leadership of community college through the state is a vital part of how we prepare our state for the future. And I know the governor, too, is grateful for your service in this role. So coming back to a little bit of generative AI and AI in general, as you heard from my fellow panelists earlier, the AI itself is actually not new. Many places, including state government and many public sector, have been utilizing AI technology for many, many years. However, it is really the generative AI that have been picking up paces recently, have really elevated the conversation. On September 6th, Governor Newsom issued an executive order directing a series of action in the next 2 years from entities throughout his administration to study generative AI, form partnerships, and take feedback from industry and academia experts. Much of that work is underway right now, including the very first deliverable, which will be finished soon and it will be made public. And the report is examining the most significant potential beneficial use case for deployment of generative AI tools by the state. Before I get too deep into the weeds on what we are doing within state government, however, I recognize this is intended to be an education forum, so I want to provide some thoughts about the new technology and the reasons why it may be so different than what has come before. Generative AI represents a significant leap forward in technology by generating novel text, images, and other contents which would transform the way the state and the world conduct business and serve the public. Generative AI can enhance human potentials and creativities in ways we're only just beginning to understand. And of course, it presents risk that we're only just beginning to study and understand. Yes, the common phrase that we are excited and have an anxiety at the same time, it's almost my daily back and forth between the two spectrum. As administration, we are clear-eyed about the risk, but the answer cannot be keep our heads in the sand and stall. Generative AI development, it's advancing and accelerating at an exponential pace. already in use in our world, including by, I'm sure, many community college students with a free tool like ChatGPT. For community college students, this technology will be presented for most of their adult life, and it will be essential for all of us to take steps to prepare them in schools and in workplace to understand and the utilization of these new tools. It is daunting to know that young people have tools that can create content. So many of us work to pull from our minds through study, research, and artistic efforts. For community colleges, I'm sure this will be no doubt present a challenge in academic instructions, as well as the need for robust discussion about how to manage work generated in part or in whole by Gen AI and turn into credit by students. But there are equally exciting possibilities for students, ways that make it easier to summarize, visualize, and analyze enormous sets of data to foster greater understanding of the world around us without the need for complex programming skills or software. Gen AI personal assistants might help most disadvantaged students benefit from more productivity and time to be successful. Gen AI tools in the hands of college administrators and counselors may dramatically increase their productivity and capacity to help students. And for this reason, we are forging ahead to learn more about the technology. We are working with world-class researchers from Stanford and UC Berkeley, as well as industry experts and many from the communities in the States and around the world. We believe thoughtful, responsive governance at the beginning of a technology's life cycle can maximize equitable distribution of the benefits, minimize adverse impact and abuse by bad actors, and reduce barriers to entry into these emerging markets. California is well positioned to do this work because we are the home state of 35 of the 50's top artificial intelligence companies. San Francisco, San Jose are dominating in this technology revolution and accounting for quarters of all AI patterns, conference papers, and companies globally. So AI economy in our state is strong, and this is something that we want to make sure that California leadership continue to be exhibited not only in the nation, but around the globe. As the Secretary of Government Operation, my focus will be working on a safe, ethical, responsible innovation ecosystem inside state government. With that, we will be closely working with the White House, Blueprints for AI Bill of Rights, the NIST for the risk management framework, and many of the agencies by doing pilots so we can learn from it. And I just wanted to say, those doing pilots and learn from it is not only subject to state of California. We would love to have partnership with our community college colleagues, and as we continue to explore and continue this path. With that, just in closing, I would just say that it is a privilege to be able to work on this, emerging tool specifically in generative AI, but it also takes a communication, collaboration, and coordination amongst our communities, academia partners, industries, advocacy group to make sure that California are taking a very measured approach in our steps in implementing generative AI in the state of California. So I want to leave more time for questions and conversations. So with that, I'll just wrap up my opening comments.
Great.
Thank you so much, Secretary Tell.
With that, we have two presentations, probably gave us a lot to think about. So I'd like to open it up to my colleagues for any questions or comments for our panelists. Board Member Rawlings.
I'll jump in on this one first. I think the conversation is so timely, and I appreciate Member Anderson and his leadership on this. It's really critically important that we're starting this dialogue now. We're deepening our own learning as leaders and as policymakers right now, so that we can set the framework for our colleges and what we're expecting, but then also being able to take advantage of the work that like the secretary is doing statewide, right? So there is we are preparing the workforce segment of our work, which is what our college is going to be doing, and making sure that we're offering proper supports for data science, big data programs, all those other academic pathways that our students might be on to these careers. But then also the opportunity for us to use it within ourselves, within our own data sets. As we talk about the data lake that we had at our last meeting, and then being able to use that analysis, as we've heard from Mr. O'Neill about the way that the Navy had been using the systems, using AI to analyze systems, and be able to do predictive analysis and all of that. We can use that same concept in how we're serving our students and how we measure the efficacy of our academic programs and our support programs for our students. And so there's so many different ways that this can apply just to really amplify our work, make our work more efficient, more effective, but then also really be able to partner with industry in finding ways that we can do this responsibly and really get the most benefit out of it while being aware of the potential negative effects. And so knowing how you're curating data, what type of data lake you're pulling from, and then making sure that you're applying the proper critical analysis and thinking as you're developing the algorithms and parsing those statements into the generative AI systems, knowing that we need to be teaching that equal among the other topics related to AI. So really appreciate this. Looking forward to future conversations.
Great. We have Board Member Brown, followed by Board Member Anderson.
I think a lot of the initial fears expressed about AI in our system have been about plagiarism and things like that. And I think with time, we're going to see those things dissipate just like we did. I think someone here mentioned the concept of the TI-82 calculator and the same kind of fears, right? So I think that will happen. I do think a lot of other things that we need to continue to talk about that you did bring up. I watch a lot of sci-fi, so I'm thinking about if there's these manless drones, right? I watched Picard. They hacked those drones and made them do something else than what the original, and those were the good guys, but what if it's not the good guys, right? And so that cybersecurity thing is huge. I'm thinking about privacy. So every semester I record a video for my students using Zoom and then post it for them, welcome them to my online class. This term, when I opened up the recording, there was a summary written and next steps that I did not request that Zoom write for me. And so I think that's a bit problematic. I wasn't saying anything private in that moment, but what if I was? What if I was having a more sensitive conversation? We have, sensitive conversation meetings, or what if I have a particular supervisor that's harassing me or something like that, right? So I think being able to opt in and opt out is incredibly important, and for people to understand what the bots are doing, and not just to roll it out without any announcements or giving people those preferences that they can make. And then I'm thinking about the entertainment industry and how they recently put some things into place in their negotiations about not requiring, let's say, a writer to rewrite something that AI wrote, things like that. So I'm wondering within the field of California community colleges, how this might impact a lot of our entry-level position workers, classified folks, or anyone involved with sort of creative things, and how we need to start thinking about how this will impact our collective bargaining agreements as well. And I'm also thinking about like the other far-off sci-fi stuff where you see the societies where there aren't jobs, there aren't entry-level jobs for anyone, and we see some states put things into place like requiring a gas attendant just so that there maintains those sort of lower-level jobs. So I think we really need to think about that. I think there's plenty of work to go around in our system, and making sure that people understand all the work there is to do so that as we implement generative AI, we do it in a way to make it so that our employees are doing things to push forward and not muddled in busy work stuff and unnecessary bureaucracy stuff. So that's my hope. But I think we need to have that general understanding before we enter into all of these topics. So I just wanted to bring up those other concerns. Thank you.
Thank you both. Quick question, because obviously the fear, and I think Board Member Brown alluded to this, is job loss. And, you know, when we look across the board, if it's classified, if it's teachers, you know, whatever, when you were in those early planning days in the Navy, were you guys looking at reduction of the number of employees? Were you concerned about that, especially with regard to the size of the military and recruitment and so forth? Number one. And then if the secretary is still there, quick question. You alluded to, you know, both the federal and the state. And the thing that worries me, because I work a little bit in government, is the fact that, you know, we will over-regulate. And especially in California, we've done this in the past. And I hope that both from the administration standpoint, I was very happy with where the governor was, but the legislature goes ahead and gives us the opportunity to create the industry that needs to be here, but at the same time looks at some of these negative impacts across every single category that we're going to be addressing. So, Madam Secretary, maybe you could go ahead and address, you know, what is the plan and how are you going to be working with the federal government? So 2 questions, 1 to each.
Want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. We didn't specifically look at man loading and manpower impacts, but I think that there's a lot of lessons that we can take from the world of computers in general. You know, when they were, you know, military started actually using them back in the early 70s, there was a lot of worry about how they could, you know, reduce manpower, and it hasn't happened. You know, there's just so many new jobs that have been created around security and around computer security and around cybersecurity and things like that, that the attitude is that, yeah, we'll continue to, you know, look at AI and look at how it affects our business, but, you know, they're also open-minded to that new jobs are going to be created, but new skills are also going to be needed. And so it's how do we, you know, pay attention and, you know, keep this in front of us and be conscious about it, and, you know, about where things are going so that we can actually train up, you know, ahead of time and be responsive. But there wasn't a lot of worry about how it's going to really reduce jobs. We still need, you know, some of the work that the Navy's done to try to, you know, decrease manpower and their combatants hasn't really panned out. I mean, there's still jobs that have to be done by people, and you have to be able to, you know, to think and to see and be able to understand and be able to react on the spot, especially at sea. So.
Yeah, and I'll jump in. In fact, if I could speak a dovetail a little bit to Mr. O'Neill's comments about the job from the earlier question. We at the state of California, obviously, you know, the workforce development, not only for the state workforce, which is about 250,000 people, as well as the impact to the state of California workforce, you know, obviously it's a very priority topic for us. And it's a similar view at this point that generative AI is not necessarily to replace job, but is, if any cases, to augment. And that augmentation will lead to upscaling of our workforce. And if, you know, if some of the skills needs to be reshifted because of the nature of just how, the type of job that continues to, you know, evolve through all of this, that is part of the education system that we should develop and be very much mindful of. And having that said, coming back to the question that was specific to me about regulation, completely agreed wholeheartedly that the last thing we want on the fostering an innovative environment is by over-regulation. And, you know, generative AI is one of those. It's not necessarily need to be addressed from a regulation aspect, from a sub-nation aspect. We know we are working with the federal government. We know the federal government are working with many global leaders on this. Generative AI is one of those topics that transcend boundaries of countries, nations, state. So in the state of California, what the governor is having us to do is really very much looking at what are the things that we have ability to govern over. For example, procurement, that is very localized to the subnational level. That type of procurement guideline, something we will be focusing on, especially based on the California's purchasing power. But when it comes to other regulations such as NIST framework or other privacy standard, we have heard from so many industry leaders, especially those headquartered in California, ask for the same thing: do not overregulate. And in terms of how to work with our legislative members, the legislative member got to do what they need to do, but at the same time, we are trying to, be very, very open and transparent of what the administration is doing. And then by doing so, that California continue to be at the front of fostering that level of innovation and not necessarily looking for an environment to overregulate.
Madam Secretary, this is Darius Anderson, and thank you for your comments. Due to the fact that you're in those senior staff meetings, I hope that you'll advocate to the governor with regard to an increased budget for us, because we, of course, go ahead and provide all these very important jobs. So thank you.
Noted.
Nice pitch, Darius. Next, we have Board Member Epstein, followed by Vice President Aguinaldo.
Secretary Tong, thank you very much for joining us today. If you could put on like a little bit of a higher education lens and just let us know what you would be most excited about with AI and what you would be most concerned about that we should be thinking about long-term and big picture.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. As I mentioned, like on the daily basis, I feel like I'm going between excitement and anxiety. I'll probably speak a little bit from my personal level too, as I have two grown children. One is in a graduate program and one is second year in college. We have these conversations at home, even though probably half of the time they tune me out. But looking at the technology evolution, what is the job skill that is needed in 5, 10 years, maybe even 3 years from now is something that I feel like it's a conversation that, not only parents to their kids, but also academia entities could really should look at. And that excitement is perhaps some of the more mundane, repeated process that not necessarily needed to do, but at the same time, those processes are there for a reason. And how much of the analytical skill that would be applied from an individual level versus utilizing a tool, to me, is something that I always talk to my kids about, to think about how do you position yourself that going forward, you will utilize tool sets such as generative AI to enhance your work, but not defer to technology to do the work for you. And that, I think it's Scott or Mr. O'Neill have also mentioned, that human in the loop factor is something we need to be very, very conscious about. And when we training our students, when we providing the education, when we're helping them with career development, constant thinking about the critical thinking side of it is not something that we would want technology to replace. And that the human factor in involving and verifying the outcome of those results is not something that we wanted to rely on technology. So I think that is the aspect that I on one hand, I'm excited about because I feel like this promotes more of the critical thinking side of that human can bring. On the other hand, I'm also a little bit fearful that, people will just reluctant and rely on technology to do that for them. So that is a small example of this ongoing conversation that we're having.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Costa. I wanted to insert a comment that was very much akin to Member Anderson's conversation around job loss and continue the discussion around the need to upskill and reskill. And I'm thinking of that specifically in the legal industry around stenographers, for example, where the conversation is around either eliminating that entire industry or having stenographers leverage AI to enhance their job. So I think that the elements of the secret sauce are still there. Whether you are upskilling or reskilling a particular industry, our job is to capture our students at every point of their educational journey so that they find their relevance in the workforce, no matter what happens in your industry. So I'm very excited about our ability to apply that secret sauce, regardless of whether we're addressing something as cutting edge as generative AI. We still have the framework that allows us to serve our students well. The end.
Wonderful.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really an important point. I mean, more and more American industry is valuing innovation and creativity, and I'm really interested to watch how Chat GPT is going to be used by the layman, and because I think it's going to really open up innovation and use of those tools for completely ways that that we never envisioned. And I do think companies are going to, if people have these tools at hand, can make their job easier. I think companies are going to create value from that, and I think it's going to generate a whole other industry. So I think you're right on. It's going to be upskilling, but a lot of times I think the upskilling is going to be on their own time, because they're interested. So.
Board Member Haynes.
Thank you. So I'm really gung ho on AI. So I want to start off with that, and I see that there is a new opportunity. When we went from typewriters into computers, and I was one of those first workers where I worked for an airline and moved from the typewriter to that thing they put on our desk that we could hardly see. That was the beginning of the transformation of the office worker. And it was an important one. However, as that grew, there were folks who were left out of that revolution. We're now in a place where we are trying to fill in those gaps relative to that particular revolution. And so what I'm hoping is that we build into this. Our 2030 vision is really focusing in on all of these changes and making certain that there's no one left behind. And what I mean by that is that equity is within that, and we have to continue to have a focus on that. And I know we all nod our heads in the affirmative, but we have not been very good about that with regard to who's left behind and who's not getting the education and the training that they need. So I always want to put that out. The good news, and I'm really glad to know that California is leading in this work. I get a periodical in which there was an article of 10 professors at Harvard, and they are definitely embedded within departments of expertise, but each one of them had taken a project and used AI and shared their findings. One of them, and it was across fields, it was medicine, it was health, it was law enforcement, and the one that really struck me as something that was important was one that was here in California. And the gist of it was one of the administrators, probably high up within either an attorney's, a public attorney, or in San Francisco, had used AI to take out the markers that reflected race. Because there's a preponderance of those, and across the same criminal, whatever the criminal activity was, took that out. High numbers of folks of color prior to that. When that got taken out, and it was looked at just based on what the offense was, those numbers went down. And so there are all kinds of benefits around those markers that really place many folks of color at a disadvantage. And so it helps me say if we have folks who continue to look for equity and the biases that implicit and explicit, but the implicit biases sometimes we don't even recognize we have in the words that we use, we'll be better for it. And maybe we can learn from AI relative to that. So I just wanted to bring forward that because I think it has a lot to offer, but we do have to continually be vigilant about who's getting this training, who's getting the training for upskilling, downskilling, whatever that is, and make certain that we are not leaving anyone behind here in California.
Thank you, Board Member Haynes. Board Member Chang.
I just wanted to speak as a student about AI. I think it's an amazing tool. I use it all the time, maybe sometimes when I shouldn't. I use it to grammar check my essays before I submit them. I use it to help me with a title because sometimes that's really hard to summarize what you're writing about. My college, Mission College, is doing a TED Talk, and it helped me write my outline for my TED Talk, which was really stressful. But I just think that it's such an amazing tool, and it's really exciting to be in a time as a student when it's being implemented and regulated, and just if in the future this board decides to regulate it in some way, not too far that it's not a tool that students can leverage, because it's really instrumental in being a student right now, and ChatGPT is free, and that's really, in my opinion, equitable, because I can use it to find scholarly articles that sometimes I wouldn't have access to otherwise. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to make myself old like Pam. When I started in the state senate, in the 90s, we had typewriters, and we had to submit all of our requests in triplicate form on different colored paper. So wow, we've come a really long way. But to Pam's point about this question of infrastructure and equity, we've done, and Board Member Epstein has been a huge proponent of this, we still have huge gaps in things like broadband as, kind of the latest sort of tech that came through where we weren't really mindful and thoughtful about it, and so people did not have access. So, of course, I'm going to go to the money, and I think my question is for Secretary Tong. I know that you've been charged with piloting some programs, some sandboxes, it says in the executive order, as well as some procurement guidelines. But it strikes me, based on Mr. O'Neill's comment about the need for these massive amounts of data, that we likely don't have the infrastructure in place at the state, and certainly maybe not the security infrastructure. And so I'm just wondering, as part of your work figuring out, how much this is going to cost, because it's great, but we're also not really prepared from an infrastructure perspective.
Yeah, no, I totally appreciate that, and I feel like this is one of those where investment priority needs to be really, really thoughtful, right? As much as we want to test out new tools, you don't want to test out new tools in an environment that's not secure. You don't want to test out new tools in an environment that, for example, that you put it directly into your production copy of the data, which might actually affect your real data set. And you certainly do not want to test out a new tool in an environment where there isn't monitoring when it comes to the cybersecurity and the privacy and the access and et cetera, et cetera. I would have to say that was very much the essence of the executive order, is for the state at this very moment right now to establish that sandbox so we can pick a few and really trying to figure out what is the cost of implementation here. And with that, then that can be thoughtfully planned out what would be the cost to expand or scale up utilization of generative AI in various places, in this case, community college included. I don't want to overpromise and want to be upfront. We all know what is the budget situation that we're dealing with in the upcoming fiscal year. And with that said, coming back to where the measured approach that the administration is taking, understanding that we cannot be stalled in trying some of these at the same time. The industry is going so fast already. And the last thing we want is to have the public sector being the last to adopt this, and when everybody else going around us already implementing this. So yes, to the degree I can, I'm obviously is an advocate of having the right infrastructure, or I call it the right ecosystem, to make sure that new tools and technology, and in this case, many, the effect into new business process and data utilization is to be done in an environment that are safe and effective.
Thank you. Board Member Anderson, did you have something else? No? Okay. With that, I'd like to open it up for public comment.
The public comment period on item 4.6 is now open. We'll begin with public comments in Sacramento. If you're calling in, press star 9. You'll have 2 minutes. I will hand it over to Vice President Aguinaldo to begin with public remarks in Sacramento.
Thank you very much, Andrea. We just have one public comment from Wendy Brill-Weinkoop.
Is this on? Okay, great. Thank you. Good afternoon, President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Chancellor Christian, and members of the Board of Governors. I'm Wendy Brill-Weinkoop, President of Faculty Association of the California Community Colleges. On behalf of FAC, I want to thank Chancellor Christian and the Chancellor's Office for the recent collaboration with FAC and ASCCC on the system webinars about generative AI. These webinars have been well attended, which shows there's a significant interest among faculty in learning about this emerging technology. The feedback we've received so far from faculty has been mostly positive and inquisitive. Many have expressed the desire for a community of practice on the Vision Resource Center and more professional development opportunities to help them better understand the possibilities and limitation of generative AI tools. As this technology continues to evolve rapidly, it will be critical that faculty are equipped with thoughtfully integrate into classroom and the student support services in ways that enhance rather than replace the human connections at the heart of student success. FAC stands ready to partner with the Chancellor's Office, the ASCCC, and campuses across the system to develop policies and best practices that will allow us to harness the potential of generative AI to expand access and improve outcomes while maintaining the human touch that is essential for equitable student success. We appreciate the Chancellor's commitment to inclusive consultation on this complex issue. With open communication and collaboration, we can develop a thoughtful approach that allows our system to promote innovation that supports the whole student. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Are there any online comments on this item?
President Costa, we do not have any hands raised for this item.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Can
really
I add
enjoyed it.
one comment to
Yes, absolutely.
That might be a great application of AI, is trying to understand as you evolve these best practices, get AI involved at the very beginning and see if it can't point some directions.
Thank you very much. Moving right along, our next information item is item here 6.5. Towards an equitable master plan for career education, community college contributions to workforce and economic mobility.
Good afternoon, Board of Governors. Dr. Navarrete and I are excited to be with you to share on this item. If we can get the slides up, please. We have a couple of purposes here. We want to share with the Board of Governors a recent executive order by our governor around a process that the state is going to lead for a unified statewide plan for career education. Frame that around, of course, the important role that community colleges already play for workforce and economic development for the state, and some of the key work that we are doing now under Vision 30 that really aligns with the work the governor is calling for as we build pathways from enrollment to employment. I must give credit to Dr. Gonzalez for that tagline, which she shared when we were recently in Virginia for a U.S. DOE Transfer Summit. And I just thought it rolled off very nicely, from enrollment to employment. Next slide, please. All right, so as we all know, when we talk about the work of workforce and economic development, that is not new work for the California community colleges. We are essential to that work and to fueling the economy for the state. We are a renowned leader in the space of workforce and economic development, long history here, number of programs and acronyms that we've previously presented on and talked about as we really look at the work that our colleges do to help fuel the workforce of today and the future, as we were just talking about AI, right, in the futures and that new generative area. And we can think back to initial campaigns like the Doing What Matters campaign that helped our system to really evolve around industry-focused regional infrastructure, and the work that we continue to do as well through Vision 2030 as we talk about taking these programs that have existed, this work that has existed, and really leading it into the future with a strong focus on a number of key sectors. Next slide, please. So we know from the Vision 2030 work, which this body recently approved, there's a very strong focus on workforce and economic development and career pathways, really elevating that work and centering that work as key work for the future of California community colleges, taking a sector approach to workforce and economic development, calling on colleges to partner with industry, to invest in upskilling workers for socioeconomic mobility, and in particular focusing in on our high road training partnership framework, which we want to continue to expand. We have within Vision 2030 a prioritization of key healthcare sectors, climate, STEM and technology, education, and early education sectors that are critical to securing the state's economic future. Taking a regional approach to better serve the diverse needs of communities and employers throughout the state, focusing on delivering flexible workforce training and education, including short-term opportunities and stepwise career advancement, and really asking our colleges to innovate apprenticeship opportunities. This body saw that previously when we brought forward the apprenticeship demonstration project, developing strategies to bring college to low-income workers. We were very excited to, at the last board meeting, celebrate our partnership with United Domestic Workers as one demonstration of that work, and also calling on our colleges to implement systems and structures to support flexible course taking and credit for prior learning, as we heard about earlier today. Next slide, please. As we lean into full implementation of Vision 2030, we do that also reflecting on recent innovations that have been taking place, many of which have come before this body. You all recently last year approved an update to the work experience regulations, which had not been touched in 50 years. So there was an important modernization of those regulations and increasing flexibility for our colleges to incorporate work-based learning across the disciplines. We've been looking at this also from sort of a scholarly perspective. We did a recent national landscape analysis about the role of employment for students in their trajectory, and found that it's very important that very first job a student enters into on their career pathway really helps set their trajectory, further supporting the need for the important work that we're doing with Vision 2030. Our office actually recently completed a state plan for career technical education in partnership with the California Department of Education. And that plan really set a course to strengthen both secondary and post-secondary CTE to improve student outcomes and meet future workforce needs. It will also serve as an important backdrop for the work that we're now going to do collectively with other agencies as well as our higher ed partners due to the governor's executive order. Similarly, I would just mention important work that's happening right now to really expand the role and impact of our centers of excellence, as well as streamlining apprenticeship, which you've heard about, and a number of key partnerships that we're developing in this area so that we can continue to be the leaders of workforce and economic development for our state. Next slide, please. So what is this executive order? On August 31st, Governor Newsom signed an executive order that directs key state agencies as well as higher education segments to develop what they are calling a master plan for career education that will align and integrate recent investments in education and workforce programs. Next slide. So as you take a look at the executive order, you'll notice a number of things. Very appropriately, the executive order centers California as the global epicenter for talent. You really feel this call to action that we need to remain that global epicenter, and really calling us to unify our efforts It highlights billions of dollars that have been invested across various agencies. And you'll hear and sense this clear call in the executive order of how do we take these separate and distinct efforts and start to braid them together and have a unified plan of action for the state. So a strong focus and repeated language in the executive order around alignment and integration of current investments. Really sets a bold vision, and a couple of quotes here, a bold vision for integrated and coordinated career education system that prioritizes pathways to careers of all types, is responsive to regional and state business needs, and builds connections between education institutions and employers as some of the key themes coming out of that executive order. Next slide. The executive order sets 3 overarching goals: a goal to further develop career pathways, to provide opportunities for hands-on learning and real-life skills, as well as a focus within the executive order around universal access and affordability as well. So we appreciated seeing sort of that call out to understanding that there are basic needs that students have in order to engage in that process. You'll also see a couple of key items that are called out in the executive order, again, very well aligned with Vision 2030. You'll see a call out to enhance career options for students through dual enrollment pathways, to build connections between education institutions and business entities, to streamline the utilization of student financial aid and social service programs. You'll see in there a call out for close collaboration between K-12, post-secondary, workforce, labor, and business within the executive order. It really uplifts the importance of the Cradle to Career data system and the use of data tools to help Californians select careers, very much aligned with the work we want to do here at the Chancellor's Office around the Common Cloud platform and things of that nature. And it also, interestingly, calls on state agencies, and in particular CalHR, to identify state jobs for which a bachelor's degree is currently required and to examine whether or not that's necessary. So you see that as well. As we look at the executive order, we see very strong alignment with Vision 2030 and the work that is already moving forward, the work that this body has already approved to move forward, as well as strong alignment with the existing career education plan. So given that California community colleges are the gateway to economic and social mobility in our state, we feel our system is well positioned to make significant contributions to the administration's goals of strengthening career pathways. Next slide. So we have 2 assignments, that we've been given by the state and our governor's office. And not just for us, but you see the list of the entities that are called out in this executive order here. Ultimately, the plan of action is for these entities to come together through a process that the state is organizing. We just recently, late last week, received additional information about how this process will roll out and how it will be organized, ultimately towards creating this unified plan by October 1st of 2024. More immediately, in the short term, each entity listed here has been requested by December 1st to provide some initial thinking about the goals and objectives of the executive order. How might we meet the goals and objectives? And in particular, if there are any potential budget or legislative changes that we think would help us to meet those objectives. And so with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Navarrete to share a little bit about our initial thinking about what some of those potential legislative, budget, and policy changes might be. Next slide.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, and members of the board. We're delighted to be here to share with you what some of our initial thinking is to really engage you in this discussion. But as we were really thinking about this, the primary thing that kept coming to mind was learning from the lessons of the master plan, right? Recognizing that we wanted to learn from that, not repeat some of the missed opportunities from that plan in 1960, particularly that didn't recognize that California's community colleges serve over 70% of public higher education students, and therefore need to be resourced, respected, and elevated as the career education mobility and entity that really is helping elevate this great state to soon to be the 4th largest economy. right? So we wanted to begin with that grounding to really respect the work on the ground that's happening by our faculty and staff. And so as we were thinking all of these, we're building off of that understanding, but also some of the work that's already happened because we've been leading the way in this space, and some of what we've identified as part of that work that is needed in the future. So let's go to the next slide and share some of our initial thinking as part of this conversation. So I mentioned that we really are leading with equity and thinking about how do we both consider equitable allocations for our system as the largest system of higher ed, and ones that have been accepting 100% of Californians that come to us seeking, anything from an ESL class to an apprenticeship to a baccalaureate degree. We do it all, and we do it with equity. So thinking about that. The other grounding piece that we've been talking a lot about, and many of the conversations that you've heard today, the projects that we're leading, are really centering around this, is creating seamless experiences for our students. And that includes giving credit where credit is due, or recognizing that technology enables us to serve them in better ways, right? So how does that then become part of how we're creating these cultures of belonging, right? Where we're recognizing that work they've done is valid, and that we're not going to put hurdles in the way to get access to either services or academic resources. And then the last point I'll highlight in this long list here is that we really are doing this with the intention of expanding employment opportunities. Because at the end of the day, the students that we are serving are not coming to us just to luxuriate in education. That is a benefit that they get on the side, but they're really coming for economic mobility. Next slide, please. And so wanted to reiterate some of the pieces that we've included both in our request and that we are bringing here, that they fit perfectly. They fit perfectly with the direction that Governor Newsom wants us to go in. And one of those is credit for prior learning. You heard the presentation. I can't do it justice. You heard directly from veterans. But let me add the piece that we are adding to this conversation, and where having the proof of concept that a Mapping Articulated Pathways map is bringing to us. They've provided proof of concept by working with veterans, those that have been in service. How can we learn from that for employment partnerships, for apprenticeship, and recognize other knowledge that is gained in the workforce? Right, and so our request that was also included in the 24-25 system budget request was for funding, ongoing funding to expand MAP to all of our colleges and then support that work. Next slide, please. The next is expand dual enrollment. I'd almost want to pause here because this is an area of passion for President Costa. But our dual enrollment, as we know it, really expanded in 2015 with college and career access pathways. But even then, it was built off of a system that initially was very limiting to dual enrollment, right? And so it had extensive guardrails that now we've learned that those are actually barriers to students, and they create barriers that affect some of our students of color, including who gets access, who gets invited, and who gets the privilege of dual enrollment, right? So one of the pieces that we want to explore, this would be a policy and legislative change that we're hoping that can build on in the governor's roadmap for career education, or the governor's map for career education, is that we remove things like the principal signature, right? We find ways to give greater access. We have other key priorities and legislated barriers right now to access to dual enrollment that we know that we can remove, and therefore expand those who have entry into college and exposure into its benefits. Next slide, please. This year we ran legislation around the Economic Workforce Development Program, EWD. We made it almost all the way through and ran into some appropriations issues, but we want to revisit that conversation because this is so important. This investment of $40 million that we currently receive for our colleges One, similar to prior efforts that we lead, has not been updated or modernized to include changes in technology, alignment with the strong workforce program that we've had in place for many years, and it definitely is not in alignment with Vision 2030. And so as we think about reauthorizing this great program, we want to explore both all of those alignments I just mentioned, but also importantly to remove the sunset date that is set for January 1st of 2025. We don't want to lose access to those dollars, but as we're asking for a removal of that sunset, we also want to update and modernize how we are partnering with our employers, the kinds of data that we are collecting so that we can invigorate our programs and serve them in a more seamless manner. Through these legislative changes that we are proposing, and we have written language, we believe we can do that, and it would really enable further expansion of our workforce and career mobility programs. Next slide, please. An expansion of eligibility for AB 540 students. This is something that really goes at the heart of Vision 2030 in terms of who we are accessing and recognizing that we really want to double down our efforts on communities of students that have extensive barriers to education. And one of those is our AB 540 students. Those that may not have the ability to have access to apprenticeship programs or internships because they don't have those key numbers that enable them. So with legislative changes, we know we can also help them as they seek transfer opportunities. That is really the key that we would tackle here, is that we are working on a pathway that gives students credit that was earned within the community college to apply that for residency when they transfer, so that they're not having to transfer as a non-resident student, even though they've completed their high school and their degrees here at the community college, that is actually recognized when they move to transfer. That's key. That is access to economic mobility, and that really is a pathway to employment for this population especially. And we don't want to leave our AB 540 students behind. Next slide, please. For many of you may know this, and I'm looking at Board Member Grande, that in our nursing programs, we have an innovative approach to identifying these oversubscribed programs. It's called a multi-screening factor, and really looks at a variety of data points and information to really ensure that we are connecting both equitably and a wide array of students to programs with limited access. But there are other allied health programs that our colleges offer that are also oversubscribed, but they're not allowed under Ed Code to use that same screening process that we know works well in other important fields of healthcare. So what we would like to explore as part of this conversation with the governor is how do we apply that same multi-factor screening, multi-criteria screening factor to allied health fields that also could really benefit and then serve students more equitably and to have access to high-paying jobs that are growing and that this state desperately needs. Next slide, please. And then two more areas that I want to highlight, this and one more after this. We talk a lot about adult learners and Vision 2030. We want to put some action to that work. And that means that we are thinking about how we help our districts and our colleges understand who their adult learners, who their working learners are. Right now, if you are at a college district, you have no idea how many of your students are actually employed, what level of employment, where they're working. They don't have access to that. The only EDD agreement that we have is only with the chancellor's office, and that data cannot be shared with our districts. So when we talk about making data decisions more accurately and using data to drive actions, our districts and colleges are already at a limited, have limited information on who they are serving and how they can serve them better with tailored pathways and more reflective support services. So one of the components of an investment in adult learner pathways would be giving them access to the data, letting the data flow, as our chancellor says, and letting it flow to our colleges so that they can adapt and recognize just how vast of a majority of working learners they have on their campuses. No.
Between Tom and Pam and their phones going off.
As Dr. Lowe mentioned,
AI in action, right?
AI in
It's
action.
AI.
Helping us find pathways.
Go ahead.
I loved it. It was perfect. Perfect segue. We want to expand support services for adult learners as well. Sorry, Pam. I just couldn't help it. It was. But through an investment in a block grant for our support services for our adult learners, we can get past this notion where we call them non-traditional, right? They're not non-traditional. They are our students. Nearly 70% of our students fall into this category. We need to first stop calling them non-traditional. They are our students. Secondly, then design services and supports that really recognize that and then reflect that. It means thinking about more expansive supports, more flexible offerings, and in different modalities. And so as part of this conversation with state leaders and the governor's office is really thinking about what block grant resources can be offered to really expand support services for adult learners so that we can offer them in ways that we haven't, that are not in the traditional manner. And then our last slide, one that you've have seen before, but information we're also including this that you saw that was key in our 24-25 system budget requests, but really thinking about common data cloud and common ERP and what that means in terms of both enhancing security across our system, more seamlessly offering supports, and then better understanding, again, that data that lives at our colleges so that we can be more responsive, both at the state level and at the college level. So this, again, is mirroring and seeking alignment with that 24-25 system budget request and elevating it to this conversation about what it means to use that powerful approach for a career education master plan. So with that, we'll go to the last slide and then open it up for questions. This is really what we want to elevate as part of the governor's conversation and the deeper proposals that we intend to submit and bring to this work for December 1st. Love to hear your feedback and open it up for conversation, so I'll turn it over to President Costa.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, comments, questions? Board Member Epstein, then go to Board Member Salas.
Well, this might be naive, but when I came to the board and I had to go in front of the Rules Committee to be confirmed, I had a great deal of difficulty figuring out the career education stuff. And when I look at your slide too, if you go back to it, there's 11 boxes, and 5 of them are acronyms. I guess my hope through all this is that I know these are different funding sources and they have different responsibility, but if there's a way to somehow, turn this into a more simple way, I think would help the colleges, it would help the students, and I don't know if that's in the realm of possibility given, that these all come from different pieces of legislation, but I would greatly appreciate if we could have something that was a little more understandable for people who are not in the weeds.
Yeah, I'm happy to tackle that first and then turn it to Dr. Lowe. But what you're seeing here is, as you highlighted, Board Member, is that you're seeing essentially the funding sources that really support this work at the California community colleges. But you're absolutely right. When a student comes to us, they don't care what funding source our work is coming from. They just care that they have a seamless experience, and that at the end of the day, they have a family-sustaining job in a workforce that is of growing complexity. So we agree. I think that this work gives us the potential of having the right investments. But at the end of the day, we are the ones that have to worry about those. For the student, what we present to them should be as seamless as possible.
Yes, and I'll just add to your point, Member Epstein. I think that's why we're excited about this call from the administration, from the governor's office. As you read the executive order, it's clear that there's a recognition of that. It's clear that there's a recognition that we have a number of separate and distinct programs and funding sources, and the call is really to integrate and align. And so we're excited to engage in that work with these other agencies and higher education institutions and see what we can create.
Salas and then Escobar Carrillo.
Thank you very much. And this is a very interesting conversation and something that really piques my interest since my very, very, very first professional job after I got out of college was working for the EDD and working on, matching, employees with the job. And so one of the concerns I have, and I hear from the younger generation, and why I think that SB 540 is so important, where if you take a break from the state of California and you leave, there's a lot of good, valid reasons for doing that now, and that's the extreme cost of living. So a lot of our young people are moving out to save money, and I think that trend will continue. And what we're doing is we're losing a lot of potential talent there because of the cost of living. So I think that that's a bigger problem that has to be addressed by the California government and the legislature, is how do you, and when you're talking about a family-sustaining job, I know young professionals now that have 2 careers that can't even afford to buy a house or rent a decent apartment. So that has to be answered, or that has to be a very important part of the equation is all, and that's my editorial.
Escobar Carrillo, followed by Haynes.
Yeah, I was curious just about the work you all did around the landscape analysis and how, I mean, we don't have there's other folks that do things really well outside of California, and like how we think using that national landscape analysis, you might infuse that into this conversation with the other partners that the governor has called to the table to help over this next year or so. I'm just curious how you all are thinking about that, since you did that work, and hopefully you can bring that knowledge to the larger group.
No, absolutely. So as we're learning more about how this process will unfold, it'll launch in January, and they will be organizing a couple of sets of work groups, and they're asking us to appoint various senior staff from the chancellor's office to those work groups. So certainly our goal will be that we come into that room armed with that information about not just the national landscape analysis, but the work that our colleges do and have been doing in this space, that we carry into those rooms with us, best practices, models, examples, so that we can help to influence the conversations that take place.
So I really do have a question rather than a statement. So we've put adult learner with pathway. And when pathway was established, it just said student pathway. And it didn't match up with how an adult learner would navigate the pathway. And it was also written by folks who were in the university system, that they had a traditional perspective of how a student would navigate that, and it really was typically not our student. So the question, I have 2 questions. What are we going to do differently than what was sort of designed relative to our adult learner? And then do we have a definition of what are the elements, what's the profile, what is that adult learner? Because we have 24 and 25-year-olds that are single, they're living at home. Their parents are giving them a stipend, whatever. Now that might not be a lot of them, and that pathway is very different than the pathway I was on when there was no such thing as a pathway. It was I stopped out, got back on, stopped out for a whole lot of years. And let me just say that at Los Rios, we have focused as a board goal on the adult learner. And when I looked at our presidents, they were hard pressed to tell me what they viewed as an adult learner, because we've just been using the word. So what do you foresee that to look like? Or is there a definition that we're working on? I mean, I really don't know, because I don't know that EDD can do that for us. It can tell us who our workers are, whether they're part-time, what areas they're in, but they can't help us with where our focus is. And we are going to have to focus, right, on that entity. So can you help out with that?
Yeah, I'll kick us off and then hand it over to Dr. Navarrete to talk about some of the work we're already doing in that area. There is debate in the field about what the proper term is. Certainly, I know we've talked internally about the difficulty of the term adult. Technically, unless you're a duly enrolled high school student, all of our students are adults. I've heard some entities throughout the language of adulting students, right, to indicate students that are, working. We've used the term working adults. We now see a particular focus on students who are parents, right? So parenting students. So I think from our perspective, as we walk into the room, we really are talking about the majority of our students, which are students who are also working. Right, so working adults, because we know in our very lovely state, but very expensive state of California, even that 18 to 24-year-old is typically working at least part-time. Is just the reality of living in our state. So we have typically focused on this threshold or definition of a student who is also working, right, who basically does not have the opportunity or the luxury of only focusing on school and sort of that quote unquote traditional, that we want to get away from that language, college student who's just doing college and that's all they're really engaging in. So I would say that's the definition we've been honing in on, our students who are also working.
Board Member Medina.
So to your second part of your question, apologies. So there is extensive debate. I think if you were looking to read for something, we did recently send out an article that talks about this to the field, and one of the closest, and it's not a catch-all phrase, is post-traditional, but it really means students that have accessed higher education. They're different patterns than most higher education was designed. So they may have not come right out of high school. They could be foster students. They could be veterans. They could be parenting students. So it's a catch-all. But it's also not, adult learner is more appealing, quite frankly, than kind of that research term. But in terms of what we're doing, I think getting access to data such as EDD is not going to be the panacea, right? Because, for example, that data relies on employment information, so that's Social Security. So you're automatically going to exclude any student that doesn't have a Social Security number. But it gives you a better sense, and even with that, it tells us that 61% of our students right now are working more than part-time. And it'll give you a sense of also unemployment patterns. So when we talk about bringing college to student, you can also identify partnerships there, and where our students are spending the bulk of their time. In terms of pathways and designing, it really means having an understanding of then, if their employment patterns are this, what are the access times for courses, course scheduling design, service design, what are the high peaks of employment or busy time for our students? what are flexible scheduling modalities, and then what is likely what they're earning so that we can understand what basic needs and basic supports could be offered. So it gives you more insight into this kind of game of Clue to build a profile of who our students are and what they might need. That doesn't beat, obviously, talking to your students at the campus, of course.
So can I just close with just a comment, and that is, the RP group just put out a report on Black students, and one of their research findings was that if a Black student met with a counselor at least 3 times during their tenure, and that counselor looked like them, they had a 70% success rate of either getting their AA or transferring. And so what I say that to say that at the very beginning of this process is so critically important. That sense of belonging that you started off with, that connection at the beginning, that feeling that you belong on the campus at the beginning is so critical because it sets up the stage for success for so many of our students. And since so many of them work, a design that they can get through, and somebody in a bad time, that student in a bad time can go back to that counselor and feel like they've built a relationship, is just real key. Because if 70% of our students are working, it means that they've got a lot of pressure points, and their design has to be inclusive of that. Anyway, thank you.
I'm going to segue off that comment without sounding redundant. You mentioned like a good point. What exactly fits the criteria for non-traditional students? And I think it's a conversation that really comes time and time again. And I even get asked, what is before I used to use the term non-traditional, obviously we're going away from that, adult learner. I know there's an organization like the Association for Non-Traditional Students in Higher Education. But like moving forward, if somehow, I don't know whether it's actually, getting in contact with a nationwide world-renowned researcher, obviously with an emphasis in this field or something. The reason I mentioned this because, quite frankly, we were to have that criteria, and if it does tie to 70%, which are the numbers, which is a lot out of 1.9 million students, moving forward in the future, our advocacy could actually really be reshaped towards that narrative of adult learners in the future. Like next year's CCLC conference could probably have a lot bigger emphasis on that, and or the RP group or something along the lines of that. And obviously, that could go a long ways if somehow, I know I'm asking for a really big task, obviously without necessarily like a short time set of when I report back, but if obviously you could get more information on that, I would truly appreciate it. So with people, obviously, academic institutions within your purview. I know you want to Stanford. I don't know if you know anyone in particular at your academic institution. That'll be great.
I also think that Board Member Legrand would like to make a comment virtually.
Thank you. Couple of things. This is an interesting conversation to me. I would should say that words do make a difference, and I'm so glad that we were thinking about getting rid of the non-traditional term because they really are all students. There's we put so many labels on people that don't really make any sense anymore because most students are working because they can't afford not to. A lot of students are parents now. It's not, we don't own the whole segment of that. But I also think what's really different for me from when the master plan was developed in the 60s is the expansion and explosion of the community college system and how many students we are actually serving in the state of California. And I know it's going to be a difficult conversation with our segments, but we should no longer be looked at a third tier in the higher education process. We should be equal partners because as we expand more into BA realm and working with the employment segment to make sure that our students are ready to enter the workforce, we really are, I think, a real viable partner in this. And I think we get so siloed in our approach. UC doesn't really know what the community college does. CSU doesn't really know, just like we don't know what K-12 does sometimes or what our students are going to be like when they get here. And so I do think that bringing the entities together that the governor is trying to put together is an opportunity to really try to educate one another about what are the complexities of what we're doing. And keeping in mind that these are all California students. These are all students that could be important to us, and that we shouldn't lose sight of that. I know I made that pitch a lot on CSAC, but we really try to segment out public schools from private schools. And I said, not everybody's USC or Stanford. So students are really suffering there financially as well if they're not in one of those major, well-endowed institutions. So I applaud the work that we're doing. I think I'd be interested in hearing more conversations. I'll have a confirmation hearing coming up at some point, probably in January or February. So I just want to be as educated as I can. So if I heard remember Epstein make that comment that he was quizzed on that, I'm just going to really be paying attention and taking a lot of notes now, just so that I'm prepped for that. So I really appreciate the work that Dr. Navarrete and Dr. Lowe are doing on this, and keep fighting the good. That's it.
So yes.
Oh,
Dr. Barcelona?
just on that point about just the connections between our three systems. That was something I was also trying to get at when we were talking about the national landscape analysis. Like, I really don't know. Do we do it the best? Are there actually other states that do a better job of building those connections? Because it does feel like that's, our students get lost between the 2-year, associate's degree and then what's next. A lot of them make it, right? And we're making good progress, obviously, to get people to actually transfer and get that 4-year degree. But I just don't know if there are other parts of other states in the country where it's actually, they're doing a really good job that we can learn from. I mean, our systems are so massive compared to other states, so there's probably only a few other places we could actually really look to that can scale at our level. But that's something I'm very interested in.
So I'm going to associate myself with Board Member Epstein, which is I've been involved in education policy for quite a long time. And this is one of the areas that it's like, I don't think anybody's really come up with a great sort of process. Board Member Grande and I sat on the Perkins plan with our colleagues at the State Board of Ed. I know more about it after having served in that, so that tells you. But I would say, and on the heels of these very forward-thinking presentations we had on AI, one of the weaknesses we've always had as a state and workforce is that EDD data is a lagging data point, and what we really need to be doing is predicting prescriptively where the jobs are going to be. I like a lot of what you have about removing hurdles for students. I also think we have some institutional hurdles that we need to address as a system. So do our colleagues in the other segments. I'm not saying it's just community colleges. And the idea that, it's a terminal thing for a student, that they're going to just come to us, they're going to get their certificate, and then they're just going to go along their merry way. I think Pam's experience is much more common, and I think previously staff described it as a lattice. We used to think of it in terms of ladders. I think that's gone. And so I think, what I'd like to see is, in addition to better predictive modeling, I'd also like to see, and candidly, we do this at Calbright, it is getting into competencies and informing students, when you do this, here are the multiple pathways that this can lead you on. Here's the maximum flexibility that you can have. The allied health is a wonderful example, which is, there are certain skill sets that are transferable across those professions. So anyway, I think it's an opportunity, and we have the right team on the case, obviously. So thank you. With that, is there any public comment on this item?
The public comment period on item 6.5 is now open. We will begin with public comments in Sacramento. If you're calling in, press *9. You'll have 2 minutes. I will hand it over to Vice President Aguinaldo to begin with public remarks in Sacramento.
Thank you, Andrea. We just have one public comment from Wendy Brill-Weinkoop.
Hopefully this will be a short one. Good afternoon, Wendy Brill-Weinkoop, President of FAC. As you consider the development of an equitable plan for career education, please make faculty equity a top priority. Faculty are on the front lines of student success and equity, yet currently the majority of faculty work part-time without job security, fair compensation, benefits, or professional support. This two-tier system limits student access to full-time faculty and diminishes the power of faculty as mentors. To truly advance an equitable vision for career education, we must address inequities faced by faculty. I urge you to pursue policies that professionalize part-time faculty positions, increase full-time faculty hiring, enhance faculty diversity, and ensure workplace equity. Part-time faculty deserve fair pay, a living wage, benefits, job security, a sense of belonging, and the resources to support students holistically. When faculty jobs are good jobs, students benefit. Addressing faculty equity is, as part of the plan, will strengthen career pathways for generations. Faculty stand ready to partner in this work. Equity for faculty means equity for students. Thank you for your commitment to this vision.
Thank you for your comments. Any virtual or online comments on this item?
President Costa, there are no virtual comments on this item.
Great. Dr. Lowe, we have you with us again for another informational item. Item 6.6, Baccalaureate Degree Program Implementation Update.
Thank you very much, President Costa. Board of Governors, I will keep this fairly brief. You have a more detailed digest, and I will not hit all of those details. We'll use this opportunity for 2 points of celebration. One, since we last convened, we were able to move forward 2 additional programs from Cycle 2 to full approval, getting through the intersegmental duplication concern process. So big congratulations to Los Angeles Mission College for now having their biomanufacturing program approved, and to San Diego Miramar College for now having their public safety management program approved. Thank you to President Costa that when we send her these emails, even when she's out of town, she stops and takes a look at them and gets us those approvals. So we're excited.
So the districts know from Europe approved it.
Yes. Yeah, we should add that. She wasn't just, around and about in the States. She was in Europe. And yet she logged in somewhere to take a look at those and to give us her approval for those. We wanted to give you all that update and to celebrate with those colleges. We still have 5 programs from Cycle 2 we're still working through and hope to be able to celebrate those soon at the next board meeting. Also want to highlight another point of celebration that is in the update through our consultation with our colleagues at CSU, where we've had a number of meetings with them, sort of really negotiating the processes and procedures for this. We were able to collaborate with our colleagues at CSU to come up with what we're calling an expedited review process for previously approved programs. And you see the list of programs there. Every cycle, we will consider other programs that can be added to that list. But with these particular programs, it provides our colleges an opportunity to, one, know that if they are developing a program with the same curriculum in this area, they can expect the intersegmental review to go quickly and to move forward expeditiously. And it also just helps us to streamline the process. So we're very thankful to our CSU colleagues for the collegial conversations that we've been having and for this list for expedited review, which is really going to help us moving forward. So with that, I will conclude the update and take any questions or comments.
Board Member Grande.
Thank you very much for the update. I really, really appreciate it, especially this expedited process for certain programs. One in particular, well, technically 2 bullet points, dental hygiene and dental hygiene administration. It was one of the areas that I had inquired about before, as we have so many of these programs in our community colleges. Is there any way that the chancellor's office is considering an expedited process for those programs that are mirroring what other programs have already done? Is there a way that we might be able to help them shorten their time to approval?
Great question. It's something we'll talk about, right, and we'll think about. I think one thing we will always have to keep an eye to, one, because it's mandated by education code, but also just important due diligence is really that checking for your region, right? Do you have evidence that this is a needed, right, in-demand career? Do you have evidence that there are employers that are ready to hire these graduates or to promote these graduates, to pay them more highly? But we definitely, I think, as we continue to expand baccalaureate degrees, I could certainly foresee, Member Grande, there coming a time where for certain areas where we've now have, 10, 20, 30, 40 programs, that there could also be an expedited review for the internal approval as well.
I just have to give Dr. Lowe a shout out. I don't know if the board recognizes the tremendous lift this program has been, and how many hours she has dedicated not only to the content of the proposals themselves, but also getting us into more of a process with CSU, because they were very aggressive timelines in the statute. And like Board Member Grande, the expedited review process, I want to thank you. It hasn't always been an easy process, and you have always handled yourself with grace and integrity. So thank you very much for that.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
With that, is there any public comment on this item?
The public comment period on item 6.6 is now open. If you are calling in, press star 9. I will hand it over to Vice President Aguinaldo to begin with public remarks in Sacramento.
I have none. Okay, there you go.
I think Cheryl would like to speak. Come on down. You don't have to wait.
Cheryl. You're a new contestant.
Thank you. I just want to, again, I always have gratitude, but I appreciate our system's focus on creating opportunities through baccalaureate degrees, and it has not been easy along the way. The 15 colleges that started the effort, Joliena's college being one of them, like incredible work that they've done to pave the way for more colleges now to have that conversation. The advocacy that's been done on behalf of so many of the organizations represented behind me and throughout, also incredible. And then, of course, the work being done by our chancellor's office folks and Dr. Lowe and others to work closely with CSU in working with the ICAS faculty, the Intersegmental Committee of Academic Senate's faculty. They early on echoed some of the same frustrations as their system office about some of our decisions made in this last year. But we've got to a point in that space where they appreciate more what we're trying to do. And it's been through continued conversation. And I think that is both due to the conversation amongst the faculty in ICAS, as well as amongst the system leaders in their spaces, because then we talk to our system leaders, of course. And so I just want to acknowledge, I think a couple things maybe that fly under the radar, the incredible role of articulation officers. And it's already been mentioned today, right? But again, articulation officers have done a lot of work of the baccalaureate granting colleges, have done a lot of work to explore ways to be able to transfer or articulate upper division general education between colleges, particularly those that aren't cohort-based, which opens up opportunities for our students to, make sure that they have a little bit more flexibility in meeting those
30 seconds.
Requirements. And then also, we brought in more faculty readers at the invitation of the chancellor's office on this round, and I think the norming session that we had after, I think gave more folks pause to really think more about, as we're reviewing applications, what does it mean to be upper division versus what does it mean to be lower division? I think, that's some of our work, working with curriculum leaders, is to, as more colleges venture into baccalaureate, is to help reinforce that, there is a different level of expectation, outcome, rigor expected in upper division. And so we'll continue to reinforce that so that we can make sure that we truly do have baccalaureate degrees that are comparable to our partners in UC and CSU and the independents. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, is there any online comments?
There are no online comments at this time.
Great. Thank you. Next, we have item 6.7, our board member reports and recognitions. With that, are there any board members who would like to provide a report? Hey. No, we don't, okay? Look at her. She's trying to push this meeting off the rails as the former president. Board Member Brown.
So I just wanted to share that on October 5th, while many of you were at the Adult Learning Summit, I was in the Central Coast at a baccalaureate degree promotion sort of event that occurred. I got to visit Cuesta College and Allen Hancock College. It was really fascinating coming from my background from a 9-college district to go see what's going on there. in a very different environment. But a lot of what we hope for and what we're frustrated by is actually the same. So that was really interesting to hear from different perspectives. So I just wanted to say that was a really wonderful event. And also on the 24th, I got to attend the Santa Ana College event, which was also lovely as well. And so I just wanted to report on that. That's it.
Board Member Medina.
So I just want to say how I can't believe time flies. Exactly a year ago, during the November meeting, was my first meeting on the Board of Governors. I was a junior member then. You fast forward to a year later, I'm the senior student member on the Board of Governors. And I could say I couldn't be happier to join. I'll be joined by Casey Chang, an amazing, phenomenal student leader. I first met Board Member Chang about a year and a half ago when you were elected as Vice President of Communications for the SSCCC. But I didn't work with you until about 2 weeks later. It was an AB 1111 course numbering case study event. And since then, I was just blown away how intelligent, how well you articulate. Just overall, you're a great team builder and team leader, and you work well with everyone. You're always there, obviously motivating, pushing other students to do their best. And like I mentioned, couldn't ask for a better, fellow colleague on the Board of Governors. Congratulations, and I know I could speak on behalf of all our fellow colleagues here. Welcome on board, and we're so proud of you.
Great, thank you. Colleagues, we're being joined online by one of our former colleagues, Board Member Joshua Elizondo. And so I wanted to take this opportunity for all of us, hey Joshua, to chat about the many contributions that he brought to the board during his time with us. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to you, colleagues, for any comments regarding Joshua. Board Member Medina, followed by Board Member Grande.
Oh, talking about from one student member to another. So Joshua, I had great honor actually serving alongside you. I learned so much from you in the close to 1 year, obviously, couple months, 9 months of serving together on the Board of Governors. Sorry, can you all hear me clearly? Okay. I remember, I think I told you, no worries. Stop for a second.
We're just double muted. We're good now.
So I mentioned this during, I want to say the June meeting, which was your last meeting here, if I remember correctly. If not, it was June or April, in which when I was considering running for the Board of Governors, I was blown away when I saw your bio. But your bio is one thing, but then actually meeting other students who actually worked alongside you is another, obviously. You're just a leader, like I mentioned. I mean, you do so much. You go above and beyond. You're a wonderful asset at Santa Monica College and here on the Board of Governors. Can't believe you're gone, but I wish you the best. I'm not gone, but obviously moving on to other things. No, you're still here. And congratulations on your future endeavors and good luck with your studies. And rest assured, your seat's in good hands.
Well, hello there, Josh. It's so good to see you. We have missed you here, but we know that you're doing amazing things, much like you did when you sat beside us, and provided a unique perspective that could not be duplicated by anyone other than someone with your lived experience. We benefited from the wealth of knowledge you brought to us and your willingness to share the trials and tribulations of being a community college student. And then we got to champion you and see your successes as you made the ultimate transfer, as we want for all of our students, collecting so many ADTs along the way so that it ensured your success moving forward. And we are absolutely delighted to know that you're doing exactly what we want of a California community college student, and that is living your best life and being ultimately very successful with the firm foundation you received in the California community colleges. Best of luck to you in all of your future endeavors.
Hey, Josh, how are you doing? You look good. I want to thank you so much for your service and the willingness to tell your story, because I know how important and how impactful that is to students who feel uncomfortable about their story. You allowed them to feel comfortable about their lived experiences. And while you're not with us in person, you are with us in spirit, the spirit of having been a student representative. And I'm hoping that you're giving Pepperdine hell. Okay? Good luck.
Joshua, did you want to say a couple of words?
Yes, well, thank you for having me today. It's been bittersweet not being with you for the last few months, and definitely just kind of reflecting on my time with the board and my time at CCC in general, starting all the way back in 2014 when I first joined my community college, and then just how I transformed and changed throughout that process and learned leadership and how to school correctly to be able to transfer as Member Grande. I really owe a lot of who I am to the system and the people that touched me along the way. So I really appreciate this moment and appreciate. I'm on track to graduate next semester too, so hopefully I can start doing some things after that.
Thank you so much, Joshua. You join a very illustrious list of our student board members who have, at least during my time on the board, gone on to do really amazing things. And we know you will as well. Like the rest of your colleagues, I really appreciate you keeping it real for us on the board and really, at least for me personally, helping me better understand the difficulty sometimes of navigating our system for our students. And you were very transparent about that. And I think that it really helped us make better decisions as a board. So thank you for sharing that with us. We really appreciate it. Thanks, Joshua. Okay. Are there any public comments regarding board member reports or recognitions? Oh, Casey.
Okay, I wanted to take the time to introduce myself to those of you who have only met me through email up until today, which is like majority of the people here. My name is Casey Chang. I go to Mission Community College in Santa Clara, which is the South Bay area. I've lived in the Bay Area my entire life. I'm the new student member. For those of you who don't know, I'm very excited to be representing the 1.9 million students. I'm so used to saying 1.8 million, but with the increase in enrollment, which is super exciting, it's now 1.9. In addition, I wanted to thank you all for your warm welcomes in person and through email. And I am thrilled to be a part of the conversation moving forward, and I'm excited to be in this boardroom for the next 2 years. And of course, promoting a truly student-centered higher education system and sitting in this meeting and being a part of the conversation, it really shows that every single board member here is advocating for a student-centered higher education system. And since it's my first board meeting, I'd really appreciate if we could take a group photo because I really want to remember this moment. And I want to thank Paul Medina for the guidance, student leader to student leader, and for your welcomeness and just mentorship throughout the time. Thank you.
Absolutely. When we're done, we will take a group photo to commemorate the moment. With that, I'm going to consolidate this item with our next item, which is public forum. So if there are any members of the public that wish to address the board, now is the time to do so.
Public forum is now open. I will hand it over to Vice President Aguinaldo to begin with public remarks in Sacramento.
Thank you, Andrea. We have one public comment from, is it James Lanich or James Lanick? Welcome.
Good afternoon, President Costa, members of the Board of Governors. Oh, thank you. Chancellor, my name is Dr. Jim Lanich. I'm Chief Executive Officer of Educational Results Partnership, a nonprofit organization, and I'm speaking here also as a member of the public today. We have been your K-12 data partner for well over 10 years. We created and managed the CalPass Plus data system in partnership with San Joaquin Delta College. Through this data system, we have collected over 700 data sharing agreements with our K-12 districts, matched these data with college records, and found out what happens to students over time. Our work led to the adoption of your multiple measures placements at all the colleges, remedial education reform, and guided pathways. Unfortunately, I'm here to share that we're ending our relationship with the Chancellor's office. We can no longer tolerate what we perceive as inappropriate and unethical behavior by the executive leadership of the IDEA office. We've been told by the executive leadership that our work is no longer a priority with the Chancellor's office. We recently learned that the same executive took away from Delta College a board-approved grant for $1.7 million this last March. Worse yet, Delta College was never informed that they received this grant that you approved in March. Instead, months later, they were told that they can expect 4% of that amount.
Seconds.
For months, everyone has been left in the dark of where these millions of dollars have gone. As a result, we never received any of the resources we were promised to do our CalPass Plus work this year. I'm asking for an investigation and an explanation how your approval of a $1.7 million grant was never awarded and was actually taken away. I'd like to know who directed the IDA executive leadership to take this grant and move money from Delta College as you approved it. In closing, it's from my heart, I want to thank the community colleges for a decade of partnership. It's unfortunate that this situation has resulted in the end of our relationship. Thank you.
Next, we have one virtual public comment in our public forum.
Yeah, Stephen Petzold, you have control of your mic and can address the board.
Thank you. My name is Steve Petzold in Santa Clarita, California. I'd like to suggest you move public comment to the beginning of the meeting rather than the end. I had to wait through the whole meeting today to talk on something not on the agenda. But the topic is very important, and that's anti-Semitism on the campuses here in California. Community colleges are not immune to anti-Semitic behavior. And I am asking you to take action to tell the chancellors of the 116 community colleges that it's not acceptable and to take action. My experience at College of the Canyons, and I'm sure it's other places, is that I received permission to put up hostage flyers on approved bulletin boards and kiosks on the Valencia campus. I would put them up and return to find that they had been taken down. Not all of them, but a large number of them. I reported it to campus security and they made a report. I went to the Board of Trustees meeting last Wednesday and I was met with what I would call empathetic indifference. We can't watch the kiosks. We can't watch the bulletin boards. We don't have a board policy to punish people. The security guards on campus have told me that they're not allowed to stop a student from taking down the flyers. There are no security cameras in these high trafficked areas to see who might have taken them down. And that might, if there were a very
30 seconds.
One of the campuses, I contacted the state chancellor. I asked her to sign the statement put out by the Universities United Against Terrorism. I asked her to let me know she got it. I have not received a response. The UC program and the CSU programs have issued statements. The community college chancellor should issue a statement to the chancellors instructing them to fight against anti-Semitic behavior on the campuses of the community colleges in California. I'll close with that.
That is the end of our public comment. So, colleagues, I am happy to report that at 4:13 p.m., the business of the Board of Governors has concluded. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.